I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order, that the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everyone. It's always fun when we have a big crowd here. You know something exciting is going to happen. So we're going to start off by an invocation led by Board Member Don Jordan Wells.
Please stand and bow your heads. Thank you, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to wake up this morning. Thank you for the rain as well as the sunshine. Please forgive us of all of our sins. Help us to say, do, and think things that are pleasing to you. Please bless us as we meet tonight to make decisions for our school district. Lord, give us wisdom and discernment to make the best decisions for our students, staff, and community. Bless our teachers and students to get the rest they so need and deserve. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. And at this time, we will have our Pledge of Allegiance led by Board Member Fred Campos.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I only need to know the first word. All right, so at this time, after each trustee election and after the new trustees have been seated and sworn in, we reaffirm our ethics statement as a board. So at this time, if you'll give us a moment, we will do that. As a member of the board, I shall promote the best interests of the district as a whole. To that end, shall adhere to the following ethical standards: equity and attitude. I will be fair, just, and impartial in all my decisions and actions. I will accord others the respect I wish for myself. I will encourage expressions of different opinions and listen with an open mind to others' ideas. Trustworthiness and stewardship. I will be accountable to the public by representing district policies, programs, priorities, and progress accurately. I will be responsive to the community by seeking its involvement in district affairs and by communicating its priorities and concerns. I will work to ensure prudent and accountable use of district resources. I will make no personal promise or take private action that may compromise my performance or responsibilities. Honor and conduct. I will tell the truth. I will share my views while working for consensus. I will respect the majority decision as the decision of the board. I will base my decisions on fact rather than supposition, opinion, or public favor. Integrity of character. I will refuse to surrender judgment to any individual or group at the expense of the district as a whole. I will consistently uphold all applicable laws, rules, policies, and governance procedures. I will not disclose information that is confidential by law or that will needlessly harm the district if disclosed. Commitment to service. I will focus my attention on fulfilling the board's responsibilities of goal setting, policy making, and evaluation. I will diligently prepare for and attend board meetings. I will avoid personal involvement in activities the board has delegated to the superintendent. I will seek continuing education that will enhance my ability to fulfill my duties effectively. Student-centered focus. I will continually be guided by what is best for all students of the district. All right, thank you, board. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a work session and its regularly scheduled monthly meeting to officially act on the items included on the posted agenda. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum will be provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern or informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. At this time, we're going to review our board activity chart. Ms. Dawn Jordan-Wells.
All righty, well, we have been busy this time of year. Keeps us very active. I attended the Keys graduation on May 26th, the Trinity and Bell High School graduations on May 28th. I also attended the Education Operations Retirement Celebration on May 30th, the HEB ISD Education Foundation Board of Directors meeting that I'm so grateful that I'm getting to be a part of on June 5th, the HEB ISD Education Foundation Superintendent Circle of Giving on June 7th, and Joe did a great job there, as well as he did on the next day at the HEB Chamber Luncheon, where he gave the state of the district.
I also attended the chamber luncheon where Dr. Harrington gave his state of the district, and yes, did a great job. I think everybody in the room was wowed, and it's always fun to watch people that learn things about HEB-ISD that they may not have known, and then you hear them walking away going, I had no idea our school district did that. Yes, we do. Graduations, of course, my favorite weekend of the year, just to watch every single kid cross the stage knowing that they have a story and that they worked hard to get there and get their diploma. I just go to bed on that night more than any other night, very grateful for everything that we do. We had a few of us got to do a walkthrough of the new Bel Air Elementary, which was really fun. It's coming along. It's looking gorgeous. Can't wait till it opens. And then I've also read to 2 schools. So I love that Lauren Allen set this up, and she made it so easy to sign up for the 4 schools that are doing summer school. I signed up for all 4 schools. I've already done 2, so I went to Bell Manor. And of course, you know, Bell Manor's my heart, Miss McCarty. We just had a great time. I read to the littles, and then Miss McCarty walked me around and took me down to where they were having the STEM camp, which was amazing. The kids were making s'mores in Pringle cans. I was like, how do you make a s'more in a Pringle can? Apparently you can. They were making water rockets, and they just had so much stuff. But what I was really impressed with is and I'm not just saying this because Miss McCarty's here, when Miss McCarty said, you know, a lot of the kids on her campus don't have the opportunity to go to a museum or to do these things. And she is working really hard with her teachers and with her staff to bring experiences to the kids. And that just really moved me, because I thought, what a way to get these kids engaged in a world that they may not be able to step outside that box right now. But if they have some inkling that it's out there, that they can imagine the possibilities. And I just thought that was very moving and motivating. And, you know, I just think the world of you. So thank you for your time and the conversation. I loved it. I also read to Shady Oaks, and I had a great time at Shady Oaks, too. I read to the littles, of course. They just steal my heart. And then we went into the library, and we were watching the Fort Worth Astrological Society. They were doing a live feed, like from the sun. They had the telescope set up, and they were live feeding the sun in the library. And that library was packed with kids. And it was just so fun. They had telescopes set up that the kids were going to look through that afternoon. But I don't think these kids realize that it's summer school and they're learning, because, and I really love the way that we have kind of changed over the summer school programming. I just being in these 2 schools, and I look forward to going to Arbor Creek and Trinity Lakes over the next couple weeks to read to them and see what they're doing too. But I had an absolute ball reading to those littles in summer school, so I hope we continue that.
Ms. Cole?
So I organized a meeting with our State Board of Education rep, Pat Hardy, Dr. Harrington, Mr. Streeter, and a couple other folks from the administration, so that we could talk through some issues and keep that line of communication open with her, with the State Board of Education. I attended the Student Ambassador Celebration / graduation event. Of course, that program is very near and dear to the heart of all these board members because it did grow out of our Board Ambassador Academy, and I feel very connected to that group every year. They did a great job of the juniors honoring the seniors. It's a great event. Went to several retirement celebrations, and then I too this morning went to Bell Manor Elementary. I've signed up for all 4 schools as well. And I thought I was going to get to read, but there was no reading happening at the time of day that I went. So I also did STEM activities. And there was a rising 5th grade class. They were creating presentations about planets. So they had to tell me all their fun facts about their planet and all the things that they planned to present the next day. So it was a really great day.
Mr. Campos?
So just to echo some of the others have said, this is our busy time of the year where we really get to cheerlead as school board trustees. Some of the same stuff, graduation, retirements, Chamber of Commerce lunches. The thing I want to highlight is I did again attend both proms. And not only do we get to cheer our kids, which is really awesome to see our kids all dressed up and looking good, I really got to sit down with both principals and assistant principals, and I didn't talk, I just listened about the excitement that they have regarding the redoing of the high schools and just hearing directly from teachers and staff about some of their feelings, and they're pretty pumped about what's coming up.
All right. Let's see. I mean, graduation obviously was the big one since the last meeting. So congratulations. Our 2 principals are there in the back. So Mr. Harris and Mr. Belcher, great job as always on graduation. Of course, this was my a big one for me because it was my my 3rd and final graduating from Bell. So I can no longer say I'm a HEB parent, but I'm proud to say I'm a parent of 3 LD Bell graduates. So, all right, superintendent's comments. Dr.
I think the only comment is we need to thank Dr. Johnson for the funnel cakes at graduation. That was I've never seen the board so excited. So,
Someone was so excited.
and that's all I have today.
All right, no clarifications?
No clarifications at this time.
All right, we're ready for open forum number 1. No cards? Okay, so at this time, the board will go into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session to address sections 551.071 to 551.076.
Well, that's not all a bad thing.
If you have to. All right, at this time, the board will reconvene into open session. We're to action item 8.01, consider approval of elementary school principal. I will accept the motion.
I move that the board approve Diana Dyer as the principal of Oakwood Terrace Elementary School as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Diana Dyer as principal of Oakwood Terrace Elementary School as submitted. Please vote.
These always take longer than anything else.
That motion passes. Ms. Dyer, we'd like to give you an opportunity to stand up and introduce anyone who's here with you, and congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, 8.02, consider approval of junior high principal. I'll accept a motion.
I move to, that the board approve Kathleen Harrell as the principal of Bedford Junior High as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Kathleen Harrell as the principal of Bedford Junior High School as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. Ms. Harrell, if you'd like to introduce anyone you have with you tonight.
My two girls, Allison and Avery, and my husband.
All right, congratulations to both of our new principals, and we'll give you just a second. We know you probably want to go take pictures and go to dinner or do whatever you want to do for the rest of your evening, so we'll give you just a second to do that.
Yeah, Dave, do you need everyone in the hall?
All right, so at this time, we'll move forward with the meeting and 9.01, budget workshop.
Okay, good evening. This evening, we are going to present a short budget workshop, budget presentation of pretty much the same things we looked at back in February when we met individually with each board member. The expenditure side of that equation has not really changed a whole lot, as those meetings back in February were really staffing meetings, and that's it's pretty much what our budget is, 87% payroll, so that catches most of it. So what we're gonna do is go through this, brief slide presentations, kind of show you where we're at, what we've got, and then feel free to, if you stop, ask a question, Stephen and I will answer it. And I'm going to, for this part, since this is Stephen's document, he is the custodian of that, and it's his thing, I'm going to let him go through this real quick. And then, of course, we'll come back in August and present the actual formal budget. The one thing that has not changed with this budget is the revenue side, because as you know, the legislature met and convened and had a special session, and haven't come up with anything for public schools, and there's still hope that that could happen. So all that could do is help what you're going to see here, is if they do come up with something for school districts. But we're going to show you how we're going to get to where we need to be and still be in good shape. Stephen?
Okay, so we're going to start with where we currently are right now. So on this slide, you'll see that in our current year, we're about, we have a deficit of about $8.6 million going right now. Most of that's being caused by the rollover funds from the prior year, which was going to be about $4.6 million, and then also the $6 million transfer to the locally defined fund. You take those two things out, and we're actually in the positive for this year. Okay, this is the locally defined capital projects fund where that $6 million went. As you can see, even with all the projects that have been added on this year, we're still maintaining about a $10.7 million buffer in there for any other projects that need to, or anything else that we need for an emergency. Okay, so primarily we start with the enrollment. This year's enrollment was 22,948. And as you can see here, we're keeping our enrollment pretty flat for our estimates for next year. The red dotted line is our Templeton projection. He's also keeping it very flat for about the next decade or so, so not expecting a lot of growth. For our budget for next year, we're looking at about a $218 million budget, both revenue and expenditures balanced on that. On our revenue side, as Dobie said, you can see that we're basing it all off current law right now. We're basing it on very minimal property growth on there, so about $4 million extra there, losing the rest on the state side to kind of make the difference up there. And then we'll be moving in about, at this time, about $11.9 million from the payroll fund that we set up several years ago with the transition grant money. On the expenditure side, you'll see on the payroll, it's pretty much just the new positions that were added, and then considering a pay increase for this year on there. And then the bottom part is just our requests that we had from our departments and campuses for the year to bring us to that 218 as well. These are the special requests we got from all the departments and campuses for the year. The majority of this is falling between the transportation tag system and then our maintenance $800,000 allocation. For our future projections, you'll see that we have our revenues fairly flat over the next several years. There's mainly because of the buffering with that transition grant fund money. As you can see, beginning in 24-25, the amount we're going to need to buffer that's going to be quite a bit larger as the transition grant ends from the state. Unless something is changed by the legislature, we will have that fall off in about a year. And then as you can see, that on the 5-year projection, we're looking at a deficit budget by about 26-27 for where we're going to start dipping into fund balance pretty heavily at that point. Okay. Do you have any questions at all for me?
Any questions on the budget presentation?
I will like to point out in this last slide, this, like I said, this is our 5-year projection. The very bottom line you see down at the bottom, that's our locally defined payroll fund. That's the fund we've been setting aside the transition grant funds in. So that's, you can watch that and you can see with the very top blue line, that's where we're plugging in those monies from that fund that we're putting it in from the prior year to balance our budget going forward. And this, I mean, this is how we're going to balance this out going forward. I mean, at some point, if the legislature doesn't step up and do something, then, you know, we will have to start making some adjustments. And we will deal with that when it comes. But we do have a plan going forward, long-term. This does include the proposed raise that you'll be voting on here in a little bit.
This is really great work, and the things that y'all have been able to manage with what we have, but it is, I cannot let it go without saying that the legislature is leaving public schools high and dry.
Yes.
And putting us in very difficult situations in the years to come. And we will continue to advocate and we will continue to do our due diligence, but we really need the help of everyone in this community to speak out and to talk to legislators and tell them that they cannot do this to our children.
And like I say, it's, fortunately for HEB, we've had a plan in place for many years, and we've prepared for a rainy day. And, you know, those days are coming if the legislature does not step up and take care of stuff. And as I said, there's still the hope that that could happen in another special session. There's talk about it, but there's no guarantee with that either. So it is what it is, and we will, I don't even know if I should say this, but we will be the last man standing if it comes down to it. That's
No
all.
doubt, you all have done amazing things, and this board has been very, very conservative, and
Yes.
together, as a team, we've done well and will continue to do well, and I don't ever think we're gonna, you know, let ourselves fall, but they're trying to let us fall, and we've got to all band together and convince them to behave differently.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, thanks to the actions that the administration has recommended and the board has adopted, we have the money to get through another 3 or 4 years before it becomes really, really painful. So we're grateful for that, and, you know, that gives us to get to another session. So if something doesn't happen right now, that we can get to another session, hopefully address it. But at that point, we are in a very critical situation, and it's important that you know, the support for public schools, you know, and the community reaches the ears of our legislators so that they understand that this is extremely important to us and that it needs to be taken care of. All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Just hold y'all in suspense.
All right, so we are ready for consent items. Is there any items from the consent agenda that any board member would like removed? And I'll accept a motion for the consent agenda.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the consent agenda as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right. Next, we have our Facilities Planning Task Force. Ms. Hollander.
Yes, thank you, Board. Thank you for allowing me to introduce our Facilities Planning Task
Force report tonight. The goal of this task force, and to quote what we set out to do at the beginning, was to involve constituents of Hurst-Euless-Bedford ISD in evaluating facility conditions and identifying needs, which could lead to possible campus renovations and/or facilities to support quality educational programs in a safe learning environment. I would like to take a point of privilege and thank the members of our task force that are here tonight. We have spent many hours together. They have volunteered their time. We have spent time touring, and we went to 5 different locations. And so tonight what we want to do is allow our task force members to share with you what they've learned and the recommendations they want to bring to you tonight. So I want to start by introducing Steve Farco. Steve Farco is the city councilman in Bedford, the city of Bedford, and he is going to kick off our recommendation.
Thank you, Deanne. Thank you, Superintendent Harrington and the board for letting us speak tonight. We appreciate you guys for all that you do. My name is Steve Farco. I know all of you guys. We've been friends and cohorts for years, and we've been through a lot of things, and I'm kind of wondering if Andy would be on the other side of this doing this, if we would have beat each other. If I would have beat him in 2005 when we ran against each other. But I am a city council member. I am also the treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce and the treasurer of the Economic Development Foundation, which the school district is a part of. I am a HEB resident for 45 years. I had 2 sons that graduated from Ellieville High School in 2012, twins that graduated through the IB program. I'm invested in this community with my family. I have nieces and nephews going through here. So even though I don't have any kids coming through, I really am excited about what's coming up and what we have to offer you guys. So first off, I want to thank you guys for what you do. I'm on the other side with the city council. I know you guys got to make hard decisions. I was listening about budget and issues that you have. So everything you do, we appreciate it, because I know you get the same paycheck I get over at city council, which is nothing. You do this for your desire and your service into our community, and that does not go unnoticed. So we appreciate that, and we thank you for that. Why are we here? I asked myself that. I was asking myself an hour ago why I was here. But we're here to talk about the future and talk about what's going on in this community. And if you look at what you guys have already done with what we have, it's incredible. We are the second most diverse school district in the nation, yet we have an A+ rate or A rating in the state. You guys are to be commended for what you do with our staff and our facilities at hand and the way you do it. We have 31 schools that are aging. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about what's happening to that. I remember when we moved here in 1978, and I was at Bedford Heights Elementary School as a 5th grader, and that was a pretty brand new school at the time. And now it's aging tremendously, and it looks at it. And I went to Wilshire and Harwood Junior High, and I went to Nolan. Sorry, guys, I didn't finish school here, but I do have brothers that graduated from Trinity and a sister. So I'm very familiar with this community and what's going on. But we do a great job with what we have, 97.7% graduation rate. But what could we do if we improved? What could we do? Where could we go? Okay, we're talking about, let's just talk about the high schools. Keys, LD Bell, Trinity. Keys was built in 1957. It's been repurposed 3 times. Okay, 1957, let's talk about 1957. The Ford Thunderbird and the 57 Corvette were popular back then. The toy of the year was the Pluto platter. Does anybody know what that was? Whammo bought it. Come on, Andy, work with me. Came the Frisbee. The Frisbee was the 1965. Bell High School was built. At that time, the Mustang was great, but the pedal car was the popular toy. How many of your kids use pedal cars now, or grandkids? They use motorized vehicles with Bluetooth and everything in it now. It's amazing. And in 1968, it was Trinity. The Camaro was the big car at the time. Hot Wheels was the big toy. And we look at those things. But all those schools were built in Cold War times. We look at it. It was built prior to DFW Airport. No one knew what the economic impact that DFW Airport would have on this community. Now we are, it used to be New York, and then it was San Francisco, and then Chicago. Those were the melting pots. DFW is the melting pot. But like Manhattan, we have a lot to offer, and we can redevelop. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, redevelopment. Our cities are doing it now. We have master plans being done in Bedford and Hurst and Euless to talk about redevelopment because we're the hub on the wheel. We are 20 minutes from everything. We're the place people wanted to be. 5 minutes from DFW Airport. We do not want to continue to let us deteriorate. We want to grow, and what can we do? Because we are losing families to Northwest ISD. We're losing them all out to Argyle, to Frisco, not for better school districts, just for better schools. And that we can't have that. The economic impact of new schools in this area would be great for everybody's benefit, especially our cities. You guys have to make tough choices. I understand that. We are not asking you to write a check right now and say do this. But what we are doing is we're asking this governing body to give and consider the opportunity to decide if our community is willing to invest back in HEB-ISD and this community. And that's what we're here to ask. We've got a great task force that's here tonight that's going to talk to you, and we're going to go facts and figures, and I guarantee you there's going to be questions. But consider the possibilities of what we could do with state-of-the-art schools, with the opportunity to develop even greater kids than we do. We've got great kids in this district. We've got great administrators. Give our teachers the tools in buildings that they can be proud of and our kids can be proud of. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette Cook on the next portion of this, and we're going to go from there.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeanette Cook. I've kind of been around the block a few times, so I know most of y'all. And I just want to share with you a little bit of information about the task force, how we went about our goals and our charge. And before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and the reason why I wanted to be on this task force. So I am a product of HEB-ISD. I went to North Euless Elementary, Lakewood Elementary when it opened, Harwood, Trinity. Both of my children went to Spring Garden, Harwood, and Trinity. I've been a Trojan Talk mentor, and I've been involved with the Trinity Choir Craft Fair for many, many years. So I've been around, and I want to make sure that HEB-ISD continues to provide great education for all the students in the entire district. So, with that said, a little bit about the task force. There were 45 citizens who decided they wanted to serve on this task force with us. They're from all over the district, north, south, east, west. Here are their names. You'll probably recognize a lot of them, and if you're here tonight, please stand up and let everybody know who you are. These are current parents, parents of former students, some students, community members, former teachers, and former administrators all served on the task force. And then there were 7 of us who volunteered to present this information to you tonight. So our goal was initially to look at the high schools, Trinity, Bell, and Keys, and then as we continued on our journey, we found that there were some other schools that needed some attention as well. So we initially we were tasked to evaluate the conditions of the school, identify the needs of the school and the student population, and keeping in mind always to support education and provide a safe environment for everyone on campus. We met 5 times over the course of the past 2 months or so. We met at Central Junior High, Bell, Trinity, Bell Manor, and Oakwood Terrace. We heard great presentations from the admin folks, from the maintenance guys, from the finance guys, from the
technology people, the principals both at Trinity and Bell are very invested in the task force and very excited about the possibilities. And just to let you know that all of the documents that we looked at are available on the HEB website, hebisd.edu/F, Facilities Planning Task Force, FPTF, however that is. And it's my understanding that there were also meetings held at both Bell and Trinity with teachers and students as well, which I thought was really great to get their perspectives on possible changes. So after we met at and heard the presentations, we also toured all these campuses. Well, I know that all of us have been on campuses. We have gone to choir concerts in the auditorium, productions in the cafeteria, field day. We've been on campus for the craft fairs at both Trinity and Bell. But when was the last time you sat in a classroom? So I was a Trojan Talk mentor, but I was in the N building, the newest building on campus. When we toured Trinity and we went to the A building, I was horrified. I was just absolutely horrified. The ceilings at both Trinity and Bell, very low. The air conditioner at Trinity in some of the classrooms, the ductwork is hanging from the ceiling, and when the air conditioner turns on, it gets super loud in the room. So imagine taking a test and all of a sudden the air conditioner comes on. There's no windows in some rooms, both at Trinity and Bell, and that's just kind of a dungeon feeling in some of the rooms, really, really amazing. And, you know, we're not just talking about rooms for our students, but as we all know, our jobs, we spend most of our time or more of our time each day at our workplace than we do at home. So our teachers, they're in the same situation. They're in these same rooms with no windows. So if we want to attract and retain quality teachers, we need to provide them a quality place to work and to provide a great education for our kids. Bell Manor was another very interesting facility. Pie-shaped classrooms, little wedges. I mean, the room we went in had 13 desks in it. It was crowded. I cannot imagine putting 22 bodies in that little pie-shaped wedgie. How there wouldn't even be enough oxygen in the room with 22 kids. So it's really out of date. Oakwood Terrace was our last stop, and let me just say, Oakwood Terrace is phenomenal. It is awesome, it is beautiful, it is light, it is everything that the low ceilings are not. It is great, and a really great opportunity there. Here's just some of the things that we did at the task force. We met in groups, we talked amongst ourselves, we had a parking lot for questions. Everyone was very open and eager to answer all of our questions, which was really nice. So in our very first meeting, we had to determine what would be our consensus point. Is it going to be 51%, the general majority rules, or do we need to have a higher standard? And so we've agreed upon 71%. And I want you all to remember that number because later on in the presentation, you're going to see another number, and I just want you to remember that where we are at 71%. And one last thing about the reason why I wanted to be on this task force was I was determined that Trinity High School was not going to change. The 11 buildings are fabulous. That's the culture, and I didn't think that needed to change. Undoubtedly, it will be a hard sell on that side of the district because there will be a lot of people like me who don't want that to change. But if I could be changed, if my mind could be changed, and I could see the good and progressive ideas that we have for the new facilities, I think other people can be changed as well. other people's minds can be changed as well. So I hope you will keep that in mind, and thank you all for listening to us tonight, and I will turn it over to Matthew Boyd.
Hi guys, I've seen you guys a lot recently at different banquets or the student ambassador celebration or graduation even. Not yet though, one more year. All right, so hello, my name is Matthew Boyd. I am a rising senior at Trinity, and I have spent 17 years in this district. I am 17 years old, and there were 2 students on this task force, another student ambassador and I who went to Bell, and we were kind of the representatives for the whole 30,000, 20,000 students that go to HEB. So that's a big task, but I think you'll see in these slides that I'll go over some of the things that we tried to do as the students. So part of my experience for the task force, I know Mr. Brown and I sat at the same table a couple times, and man, do I know so much about taxes now? I think it's unreal. It is unreal. I know everything that Dovey taught us about M&O, INS, all of the 2 different buckets, what goes in what, which one the groceries are, which one the car payment is. I know a lot. All right, so now we're going to look at some of the elementary schools. That is a chart of all the elementary schools in the district compared to Veridian, which is our new elementary prototype. You know that Arbor Creek and Trinity Lakes are both based off of the Veridian. But we're really going to focus on the ones that need the most help. So those 4 are Midway Park, Hurst Hills, Bell Manor, and Wilshire. Now, Midway Park is famous for its UFO landed on the ground right next to Trinity kind of vibe. And I think, where is he? To quote Mr. Minor, I'm pretty sure Midway Park was based off of a prison. So his words, not mine. That was our tour, our student ambassador tour at the beginning of the year. And then Bell Manor has the hexagonal beehive-shaped few things out there. So it's over there. Dr. Perez will talk a little bit more about Bell Manor in a minute. Whenever we're looking at these elementary schools, I want to give a little bit more about my perspective. So I used to tutor at Midway Park and Bell Manor, and after high-fiving all the kids as they walk into Midway Park, I would walk half a mile around the ring of Midway Park to get to the cafeteria, just because it's circular and because the classrooms just aren't normal and they're not square. And the same can be said about Bell Manor, where you have the pie shapes and the no windows, and it's kind of like a Trinity before Trinity, because you have to walk outside to get to your classes sometimes. So I felt a little bit of deja vu whenever I was out there, like, oh, it's raining outside and I'm outside too. It's like I'm at school already. All right, so moving on to LD Bell. We can see here, there's a lot of information on the slides, so I'll go bit by bit. So let's look at the middle educational adequacy. So we can see that 78% of the classrooms are undersized. The science lab needs replaced. The orchestra space is needed. They need additional gymnasium. And when looking specifically at the orchestra and fine art spaces, we're proud that all of them get ones at UIL and they get national recognition. So just imagine what they could do if they had adequate space and an adequate environment where they don't have to wear earplugs because it's too small and because their instruments are too loud. Now we're going to look at the left side, renovation versus replacement cost. So when the cost to renovate is 60% of the cost to replace the school, in this architectural world, the advice is to replace the school. The 60% is kind of that golden number. Here we can see it's 79%. So it's in dire need of some help over here. And that 79% is based on the current scope given our current construction costs and labor costs. On the right side, you can see there are major structural issues at both this campus, Trinity, and Keys. And here just at Bell, you can see the deteriorating pipes. And so whenever we talk about redoing these campuses, it's not just, oh, let's make them look pretty. It's let's rebuild the foundation. Let's get enough structure in so that these students can enjoy going to high school. On the very, very bottom left, you can see the current square footage. That's what SF is, and the proposed square footage. So you'll see some costs later in a minute, but the proposed square footage, those costs are based on the square footage. So just keep that in mind whenever you see maybe some jaw-dropping costs in a little bit. Moving on to Trinity, this is where I go, so I have a little bit more, I have some stories to tell about here. But starting again in the middle with the educational adequacy, 67% of the classrooms are undersized. The auditorium is too small. They need an additional gym. And in addition to all that, whenever we did these facilities assessments, we looked at safety and security. I see Mr. Dan Phillips over there, and that was important to us throughout this process. Here's a little fun fact. There are 18 exterior doors on a building. So go ahead, if you know what it is, try to count them. I'm pretty sure it's 18. I could be wrong. And as I'm sure Mr. Phillips can attest, just that one building alone presents a significant security challenge. And so multiply that by 11, and you have the entirety of Trinity. So they need some help over there to try and make sure you're comfortable and you feel safe sending your kids to those schools. And I feel safe going to those schools. When you look at renovation versus replacement cost, in our current scope, it is 81%. It's a little bit higher than Bell, but it's given all the different things that happen on the campus, the open campus design, that makes a little bit of sense. When you look at the current square footage versus the proposed square footage, it's currently a little bit smaller than Bell, but Trinity actually does have more enrollment. It has more students over there. So it's a smaller campus with a larger student body. And the proposed square footage is a little bit more to match that larger student body, and you'll see the same in the costs. Now, to talk a little bit about my own stories here, man, there are a lot about Trinity. I'm going to talk about two. One, they're both when it's raining, because that's just the best time of the year. One of them happened in the band hall, so whenever it started raining, it just started dripping from the ceiling onto the floor, just constantly from the ceiling. And so every time it rained, we'd put out little water coolers to try to catch all the rain, and like we put 4 of them, they would all fill up. And I've been told that it's been fixed. They put duct tape over it, but that's kind of like putting Band-Aids on cinder blocks. That's not really going to help, so that needs a little bit of help over there. The same thing happened in the auditorium. I vividly remember sitting down doing a rehearsal in there, and it was raining, and you could just see the water stain move across the ceiling throughout the entirety of the rehearsal, and it's still there if you want to go exploring over there. Another part when it's raining, I see we have past, present, and future Trinity High School principals in the audience. So there are puddles and rivers and rapids form every time that it rains, and there are some great memories that I have traversing and jumping over those, trying not to get wet, and having my umbrella crash into a pole or something. And those are great memories, but that's also seeing the dimmest of lights in this dark situation. When looking at TEA standards, they're obviously not the same. Mr. Farco pointed out that it's not the Cold War anymore. Their standards have changed a lot. And like the N building, you go into the N building, you can tell it's different. The classrooms are larger, the stairways are wider, and they're open compared to the rest of the campus. And because that was built later and had to match different TEA standards, and so whenever we rebuild these schools, if that is passed, these schools will be subject to different TEA standards that will make it more comfortable for students to go to school here. The last high school we have is Keys, and it is 67% of the classrooms are undersized, the cafeteria is undersized, and whenever we toured there, I specifically noticed how on some of the walls there were just these ceiling tiles in this room were just part of the wall. It was just on there, and that's the school that they go to, and they deserve a better type of environment than that. The renovation versus replacement cost is 73%, but there's a little asterisk there because there's foundational and structural issues, and that was the assessment done in 2019, and they need a better place to go to school. So here are some pics from our different tours. You can see the cramped hallways. Those people have their backs against the wall, and I don't think somebody would struggle to fit through the middle of them. So I can't imagine what it is during passing periods when they're walking next to each other. And then you can see the top left, you can see the cramped ceilings. Imagine a 6-foot basketball player going to school in there, sitting down underneath the AC unit, getting up to go to the bathroom and bonking his head on the AC. So there are low ceilings at all of the campuses. And those are us in these photos. We are living just a little bit of what these students have to endure every single day. Now, I decided to do my why at the end. I've been doing a lot of college tours. I'm a rising senior. And at the end of every college tour, they give their why. So why UT Austin, why UTA, why TCC. Here's my why HEB, why my Facilities Planning Task Force. I will not benefit from this, that's obvious. I'm class of 24, so that's the best class, obviously. Obviously. And I'm not going to benefit from this, but I want to see all of us improve. I want to see this district and this environment improve. Mr. Campos, I know your son's in 7th grade. My brother's also in 7th grade. I've seen you at different band events at Harwood. And I'm here for your kids, everybody's kids and grandkids. I'm here representing all of them. Mr. Brown, I know your children are in preschool, and I'm here representing your children too, and all HEB students, both present and future. So, why did I do this? I want to leave a better world than I was given. Now, please help me welcome Dr. Perez.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Consuelo Perez. I'm a 20-year college administrator. I'm also a college professor. I've toured many of the Dallas-Fort Worth area high schools. I've been very impressed by some of the newer schools in our area, not just in Tarrant County, but also in Denton and Dallas County. And I can tell you my role here in the committee is not as a college administrator or professor, it's as a mom. I've lived in the school district for 20 years. My oldest son, Tristan, attended Wilshire, Harwood, and graduated from Trinity. My youngest son, Colin, he attended, let me make sure I've got it right, Wilshire. I was fortunate enough that Veridian opened his 5th grade year. He then transitioned to Central, and he graduated from Bell. So I'm one of the few parents who's had a student at each high school. But I've had the benefit of being in those schools as a college administrator at many of the college and career fairs, where I can experience what it's like oftentimes inside of the classrooms. I'm here not for my sons. My sons will not benefit from what our committee is putting forth to you this evening. I'm here for your families, for our community, because I want to make sure that we build a bigger and better community for the future kids coming through. So as we talked about a little bit before, this was not some kind of arbitrary task force. There was a lot of deliberate, thoughtful effort done in order to make these recommendations to you this evening. There were administrators involved, there were faculty members at each of our high schools involved, students that were involved in all the recommendations that you're going to see, and the vision that we see for our high schools in particular. When my sons found out I was serving on the task force, they said, "Mom, of course they would build new high schools when we graduated." I'm like, yes, one of you got the benefit of going to a new school for 2 years, and I was very intentional on driving you all the way to Veridian from my house, because I knew how important it was as a person who's a product of public schools from kindergarten all the way through PhD. I've attended public schools. I've a vested interest in making sure our public schools are the best that we can possibly provide. So I was very interested to see student input, to see our administrators' input on what that vision could look like for our high schools in particular. And we'll talk a little bit about some of our plans for our elementary schools. But some of our guiding principles on the task force, we're not just looking at student and staff wellness. Yes, it's important what we do inside of those classrooms, but our students and our faculty and our administration and community deserve to have a building that's worthy of the community that we live in. We also made sure that we guided ourselves with learning with a purpose. Again, not just looking at what they're doing within the classroom, but also with our performance arts. We're very prideful in this community about our performance in our area. We want to make sure that our buildings represent that. We want to be future focused and not just planning for TEA standards as they exist now. We want to be very thoughtful on that in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years moving forward. And then again, we can't say this enough, with safety and security measures always being at the root of everything that guides us in our role. So with some of our existing sites, as you'll see in the upper right-hand part, on the left-hand part, you see the existing site. What we're proposing with Bell High School on the upper right-hand part of your screen, looking at enhancing not just the classrooms, but also our Performance Arts Center and an area gymnasium. On the lower right-hand part of the screen, you can see the vision of what a new Bell High School could potentially look like. For Trinity High School, as you'll see in the upper right-hand part of the screen, the current existing site. On the left top, you'll see the additional space for a Performing Arts Center, as well as another area gymnasium. We want to make sure that we're positioning our high schools to be competitive in the 21st century and moving forward. In the lower right-hand part, you can see the vision of what a new Trinity High School could potentially look like. I was very excited as we looked at some of the visions from our students and input that they shared. They were super excited about the possibility of not being in those desks that you and I probably went to high school in. Let's face it, our students are bigger now. They can't fit in those desks any longer. The passing periods, as Matthew mentioned earlier, how on earth in 7 minutes are thousands of students navigating those hallways and then transitioning to multiple buildings? I think you all can agree we can do better for our students. And then looking at replacing Bell Manor. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to our community. We did not want to displace those students by moving that school too far from where the community is that they currently serve. So we're proposing to replace Bell Manor at the current existing site where Keys is located, still being mindful that we're in the community that we're serving. Looking at the lower left-hand picture, you'll see an open concept of what that space can look like for our students to learn and thrive in. Looking at Keys with the current Bell Manor site, with the access to the Buinger Center being first and foremost critical for those students to transition into our workforce or whatever their career pathways may guide them. That was some of our guiding principles in looking at repurposing that space that Bell Manor is currently located for our Keys students. As Matthew mentioned, it has a very unique design. As we toured the facility, on the evening that we toured, it actually was raining that evening. And some of us had to navigate. It wasn't wrapping water, but it was a little difficult for adults to navigate that. And I asked one of our guides, how are our little ones doing this day in and day out? Again, I know we can do better to support our kids than that. We also want to make sure that we're paying attention to security concerns that currently exist at Hurst Junior High and having a secure entry point for them. So part of our recommendation is making sure that we have that secure vestibule for those students and visitors that are entering. Now, part of the discussion that we had earlier, we wanted to make sure we're being transparent. We're not going to hide anything about what our proposal is going to show, and we'll go through a little bit of our thought processes with that. But we want to be mindful just not of the buildings, but the technology concerns that we need to make sure our buildings have access to. I can say this as an administrator at some of the college and career nights and then going into the classrooms during the day. Sometimes the technology is hit and miss at some of the high schools. I've had some really good discussions with our students over the years about possibilities of them transitioning into vocational or colleges, and then the Wi-Fi goes out in the middle of the presentation. That's frustrating. On one of my social media pages, Where Were You Then posted when I was at Bell High School in the library. I think it was back in 2009. It looks exactly the same. The computers are still the same. Again, we want to make sure in this proposal that we're taking care of those technology needs to replace our devices as they need. So addressing safety and security concerns, not just looking at the primary interests that our families are entering in, but looking at the perimeter fencing around those buildings, paying attention to the exterior doors and windows. And of course, in Texas, we have to always be mindful, not just with safety and security issues, but even severe weather, that we have a communication infrastructure in place to notify our students and our staff when situations arise. And then access control, where exterior doors can be secured, making sure that we have our buildings as well as our classrooms numbered, so in case of emergency, we can locate them more quickly, and then of course with storm shelters as well. So in looking at the budget, and now we're getting to the money, we looked at not just the current construction cost in today's environment. I don't have to tell you all, construction costs are only going up. They're not going down. There's no predictable person that would say that construction costs are going to get less expensive moving forward. So we did build in some possible escalation costs that we will probably consider in a potential total construction cost. But on the lower part of this, you'll see also looking at soft costs, furniture expenses, looking at technology as we discussed, and then possible land acquisition and then contingency costs, just to have a little bit of buffer. All of those items are what we use for that total project budget. So this is what you probably sat through, the first discussion about the hard numbers. And our committee was very thoughtful. We wanted to be sure that we were recommending something, not just that was viable for our community, but something that our community could get behind and support. So we had 4 different options that we considered. As you'll see in option 1, we looked at replacing both Trinity, Bell, and Bell Manor, but also looking at Keys, replacing that as well, the secure entryway for Hurst Junior High, and then technology concerns. In option 1, the proposed budget came in at a little bit less than $820 million. That was option 1 that we considered. Again, paying attention that Bell Manor was the only elementary school in that particular option to be replaced. Now, option 2, we got a little bit more ambitious. You heard earlier that there are 4 elementary schools that are aged between 50 and 60 years. The buildings aren't getting any younger. Eventually, we're going to have to give some attention to that, and the attention can't be continuously renovating. At some point, we have to agree as a community to replace these buildings. There's no getting around it. So we looked at a possible second elementary school. As you can see, the total bond proposal rose to a little bit less than $883 million. We considered an option number 3, adding in a third elementary school to replace. As you can see, the bond rose to a little bit less than $951 million. These are big numbers. I don't deny that. As someone who works at private colleges and universities, I can tell you, telling families to invest a significant amount of their income in future earnings is something important, and we don't take that lightly. So when we met as a committee, we said, you know what? We can do better for our community. We can do better for our kids. Let's look at an option 4. What would it look like if we replaced 4 elementary schools in addition to our 2 high schools and Keys replacement as well? Yes, we do recognize that's a big sticker price. It's a little bit over $1 billion. That's billion with a B. We understand that. But I can tell you, as someone who grappled with that sticker price in our build a budget proposals, I want to make sure that we were being very thoughtful and mindful with the community's money. We've done an excellent job. You all have done an excellent job over the years in being very, very responsible and good stewards with the district's money. We wanted to make sure that any recommendation that we put forth to you was very thoughtful and mindful with the community's money as well. So when we looked at the possibilities of, would we look at option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, as you'll see as far as the percentage of the 45 of us that voted, for most of the measures, 100% consensus. Very difficult to get everybody to agree to anything. In the 4th replacement option, that's where you see in red, that's where we had a little bit of dissent. As you noted earlier, we said that 71% was the agreed upon consensus when we started this process, before we even started with numbers. So we met and exceeded that with all of the options, including option number 4. So at the end of the day, when we had our very last meeting, and we said, you know what do we want to put forth to you all tonight? What's the best recommendation for our students and for our community? What did we come up with? 97% of us supported this measure. And that is the reason why I stand here this evening in support of this, as someone, again, who's a college administrator whose kids will not take advantage of these beautiful schools that the community is already talking about. I've had people mention this to me when they found out I was on this task force. When are you building the new high schools? I let them know that the community will make that decision. We're trusting you with putting forth some thoughtful effort to make a decision on whether or not to put this for our community to vote yes or no. As you can see, the board, the committee members themselves supported this at 97%. And we are the community that represents these proposals. I'm trusting you all to not only do your due diligence, but to be very thoughtful, that we were very thoughtful in going through in this process. I'm going to turn this over to Bob. He's going to discuss a little bit more about the financial information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. And thank you, committee, for listening to us tonight. I know this is not always an easy subject, and especially since I got the financial part. But I'm going to talk about financial history more than anything else. Just to give a little about me, I've been in the, my wife and I have lived in Bedford for 44 years. We raised 3 children that have gone through all the HEB schools. All of them went on to college, and all of them had successful careers too, so I'm very happy about that. And I think the school district had a lot to do with their foundation to get there too. I've also got a granddaughter who's in the school district now, so being a grandparent, why would I be interested in what happens with the school district? I'm very interested. All the comments that have been made earlier, keeping up our our community, keeping up the quality of life in the area is all very important to me because I'm planning on staying here for a while. And an interesting little fact on me is I retired a few years back, and I'm not going to say how many years back, and got hoodwinked into a part-time job into the Information Services Department. But it was an easy job. It was delivering and picking up computers from all the schools in the school district. So I got to go in every campus many, many times to see and feel the actual atmosphere of all these schools, and not on purpose, but indirectly compare them quite a bit and see some of the inequities and some of the challenges and some of the great ways that staffs are overcoming those challenges in all the schools too. So that's part of the reason why I decided to get on this committee, because I felt there was a lot that we could do to make things even better for our students. So with that, I'm going to jump into the financial stuff here. One of the really important things as we put our team together and we're looking at all these options, and certainly some of the costs that Dr. Perez talked about as well too, is that where does HEB ISD stand in our tax rate and the history of our taxes? Because everything's paid for by the property taxes pretty much. And as you can see here, our district's total tax rates decreased by 27 cents over the last 10 years, which is not a helpful issue. And any of those that pay attention to what's going on in the state government, and we heard that a little bit earlier in the presentation by the budget guys, there's a lot going on down there and what's happening with property taxes and support of the school districts and things like that, and the tax rate for M&O and all that stuff. So going down is a tough issue. So how can we go up? Well, the good part is that for any kind of bond proposal, it's in the INS budget, which is not controlled by the state, and hopefully we can move forward with a plan that will keep us within a decent range. Another important thing is not just where HEB stood on its own, but also where does HEB stand as compared to other ISDs in the whole area. As you can see here, out of the 20-some school districts I've got listed up here, HEB is last or lowest, I should say, not last, let's go lowest in a positive perspective, in tax rate of all the school districts. So that's a really important fact there. And also you can even see the dark green and light green is the difference between M&O and INS, and even those you can see we're pretty much on the lower part of those as well too. So we have room. The important point is, as we looked at, that was what one of our discussions were, and a lot of my fellow members have also mentioned, we were all concerned about what the cost would be. Would it put us in a difficult position or not? Well, these kind of things tell us that we have room to go in this here, so we're not in a necessarily difficult position. When we came up with some of these numbers, a lot of the team was, aha, we do have room, we can move with some of these ideas, and I think that we can make it work. So going back to the bond considerations, as we said already, Dr. Perez already went through all these. There's 4 options, 1 elementary, 2 elementaries, or 3 or 4. As we also talked a lot, there was a lot of discussion about how far can we really go? Is this putting into a position that's impossible to get approved? And everybody's agreed, as you heard the numbers, that if we don't do it now, it's going to get a lot more expensive in the future. If we don't do it now, it's a lot bigger impact on our students' futures. So the time is right to make it the best judgment now, and is to go all out in all 4 elementary schools and go for option number 4. It's not a huge difference between each one. There is a significant difference, about $10 a month between option 1 and and option 4 in the overall property taxes, but that again based on a average home price. But we don't think it's big enough that that will be hard to overcome with the general public out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our fellow Alan to go into some of the details on the recommendation and some survey results we had that will help us back up some of this here. Take it away, Alan.
Thank you, Bob. I'm Alan Heindel, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to appear before the board, and I'm quite honored to represent the task force and the work they've done in the last 3 months. I've looked behind me at the mission statement. I've almost changed it to investing today to excel tomorrow, because what we'll be talking about is definitely a 50-year investment. Not necessarily a 50-year bond, but 50-year investment, because that's what the schools currently have done for us. They've given us 50 or 60 years. As I said, I'm Alan Heindel, and I spent 43 years in the HEB ISD area. My daughter has gone through the school, complete through preschool, elementary, kindergarten, elementary, up through high school. I've got a granddaughter that's going through the same pattern, different schools, going to River Trails and now getting into Hurst Junior High. Even my son-in-law has gone through the school district pattern. So we feel very comfortable, and even though I've been in the district 43 years, I've actually worked here 39 years in city government, so I know the role of a city council and certainly know the role of a board and the difficult decisions that you all have to make and the time and effort that goes into your positions. So I'm here today to present the recommendations of the task force, and I wanted to issue one quick caveat in that you may notice I'm a senior citizen, but I'm in a very unique situation. Yeah, I may look younger, but no, I am a senior citizen. But I'm in a unique situation in that because of my financial condition, the homestead is not on the Hurst home that I've been in for 43 years. It's on a different property. So the impact of this proposal and of this bond issue will hit me in the pocketbook. So it's not a senior whose taxes are freezing saying, hey, let's go for it. It's somebody who's really considered the work of the task force, everything we've done, and the implications of that in terms of my pocketbook. So having said that, it's pretty basic up front. You've got an inkling of what this was going to say by the previous 3 or 4 speakers, but this is the full recommendation of the task force as we went through about three months and 5 different meetings in looking at the current facilities. There are 2 propositions that are recommended for the board to consider to put on the ballot. One is Proposition A, which are all of the school replacements and renovations to technology. The other one is B, because state law requires us to take that part out of the main proposal. Some people may ask, well, why not break Proposition A into B, C, D, E? And that's because we have a very unified, in fact, it's very unique. We have a very unified school district. And as the task force looked at the facilities that need to be renovated, we never felt comfortable taking one out and isolating it and saying, hey, we need to move forward with this. We felt very comfortable saying, hey, we need to move forward with all, as you'll see in the next slide, all 9 of the components of the recommendation. And you can see here they are in A, there's all 9 of them. We didn't isolate one over the other because we never thought one was more important than the other. If after 43 years in this area, it's a very unique situation. We're very, people stay here for a reason. I stayed here for a reason. My family has, my daughter has, my granddaughter probably will too. And that's because we're unified through the school district, even though some of our areas are in other school districts. The unifying theme is HEB ISD. And there was no diversity in our thought pattern on, well, what should go first or what can we put off? And that's why we included replacement 4. We saw the need for it, and we saw the need for that neighborhood to have the same facilities as every other neighborhood had. The other proposition is to be the technology devices. Again, that was broken out. That's a $36 million. So that pushes the $982 million into the $1 billion category. The tax rate as you increase is 16.63 cents, as they've mentioned before. On a typical home of $245,000 with the $45,000 homestead exemption is about $28.41 a month. This would be a potential timeline. Of course, everything is dependent upon you as the board members making that decision to proceed. And then, of course, it's up to the community. The board recommendation goes to the voters for approval, and then the bond is issued. And of course, then there's the completion of the design and construction documents, and then, of course, all of the construction details. But putting it on a timeline, we can see where November 23rd would be the bond election if the board decides to call it. And then 2024 would be a year spent in the final design and engineering drawing development. Hopefully in the fall of 26, that'd be another year later, Bell Manor opens as the first elementary with a relocation of the Keys in 2027, which is kind of an elegant solution when you look at taking Bell Manor and repositioning that into the Keys and DAEP, especially with its relationship to the Buinger Center. Going back to 2026, we can see that the elementary 2 would open. And then in the fall of 27 or 28, and I've got to be very careful here because there are goals. You never know what's going to happen in construction. We certainly know that the Trinity site poses quite a few different obstacles in the way of clean construction than Bell does. But we would hope that they'd be under construction simultaneously. But however, if one finishes first, there's no reason to have an empty school, brand new sitting there. We'd open that, or they would open that. And then the following year, the other one would open if need be. 2027 would be elementary 3, and then in 27, 28, or 29 would be elementary number 4. Again, depending on how the construction goes. This is what you've seen before on how the tax rate compares to other ISDs. We always like to see how the other 24 in the area look. If this was approved full for the full $1 billion, it would put us right almost just a little above the center, just by Northwest ISD and Birdville ISD. Certainly not anywhere near the top, but that would be the 1.276 tax rate with the $1.01 billion bond program. We did take a look, and the committee was very interested in this, and what does the community think, at least preliminarily? And again, this was done in May 7th through the 10th, and the results were brought to the task force. And it had a margin of error of under 5%, so the confidence level is about 95%. Initially, and you can see that the way the questionnaire was addressed was for $785 million. That was because nobody knew at that time that the task force would be that engaged in what we were doing to try to do the best for the whole district and start bumping up those elementary schools. But they were asked at a $785 million, would you go for it or would you not? And you can see that it barely hits the 50%. Quite a few onshore, and I can guarantee that I was the onshore before I joined the committee, because again, it hit me in the pocketbook. And what were you going to do with $785 million or $1 billion? We didn't know. But once the questionnaire, the survey, went through the questionnaires up to question 31, and in those questions, they brought out the facts that were behind the scenes on the condition of those two high schools and the condition of Bell Manor and technology and fine arts and all of the other things that are in this package. You can see that it went from 50% approval to 60% approval. You know, that little 5% on sure, I'm in there now at 38% strongly because I was informed. The key here, if you're looking at general terms, is if the community is informed, there's a good chance of success here. If the community is not informed, we're back where I am with unsure. But this is it's a good initial reaction to this type of funding. This is Dr. Perez brought this up before, and I wanted to end with this because as we're looking at investing today to excel tomorrow, to get 45 people in a room in today's divisive society is a miracle to get them to agree to anything. We were looking at that 71%, and by far, it exceeded our expectations, even as we talked about the cost of going forward with that $1 billion and the need for those elementaries to be included in it, and certainly those two high schools. The two key factors that were involved in it were the need for today's students for the next 50 years, and the fact that the longer you wait, the higher this price tag is going to go. There's just no way around that. So, looking ahead, I'm going to let Faye Ballou come up and present the last portion of this presentation to you. Faye?
Good evening, board members. My name, for those who may be hearing this and are not here tonight, my name is Faye Ballou. I have a deep and rich history with this school district. The only title after my name these days is retired, and I am thoroughly enjoying that. My husband and I raised 4 children and launched them into successful careers. Their launching pad was Trinity High School. And if you approached any of them today and asked them what led to their success in their careers, they would tell you it's the foundation that they got here in HEB that opened doors for them to move forward into the niche that they currently occupy. So thank you for that. I seem to remember that a certain principal retired after 3 board members' children graduated from Trinity in the same year. We love you, Mr. Cargill. Y'all have been so patient tonight. I'm thoroughly familiar with the terminology death by PowerPoint, but y'all have been so patient, and you have stuck with us as we have explained what we feel like are pertinent information pieces that you need to make your decision. This slide presentation started at 90 slides. So you only saw close to half of what we started with. Everything that we looked at, all of the slides tonight, as well as everything that was part of the 5 meetings, is online. Tonight's will be joining that soon. So between now and your important meeting on June 19th, when you meet to talk about facilities, you'll have plenty of time to cuss and discuss, to turn this material wrong side out, upside down, inside out. Whatever you need to do, get your questions answered, talk about possible scenarios, weigh the recommendation that the task force has made. You'll have plenty of time to do that. And I would be remiss if I did not say, earlier when Ms. Cook introduced the task force, there are 2 members of this board who served as well. You did not choose to stand, but we appreciate Mr. Romero and Mr. Brown because you were a significant piece of our work, and we appreciate you taking the time to be part of that. So thank you for that. But we leave big work in your hands. We have brought great things for you to weigh and to think about this evening. You have a hard target in front of you. You will need to call the bond election by August 21st in order to have an election on November 7th. So you have a lot to do between now and then. Earlier in the presentation tonight, you heard a couple of different presenters talk about their why, or the why of the task force. There was even a slide that delineated that in very careful text, starting with the priorities of safety and security and educational function. Those are the front burner things. I'm going to be honest with you. In addition to those, there are aesthetic elements in this bond election, in this bond proposal. And I'm going to put that up front because there are going to be people who are going to come to you and say, why is that? During my tenure on this board, I heard Mr. Cargile say, more times than I have fingers and toes, that kids don't come to school for algebra and economics. They come to school for band and choir and athletics and theater and the plethora of clubs that exist at our high schools that give them the opportunity to interact with kids that look like them and kids that don't look like them. That's the magic of HEB. Here's another way to look at our why. Maybe I'm fighting a little dirty here, but look at those faces. That's what this is all about. And if you don't think aesthetics are important, go over and talk to people who live in the Oakwood Terrace community. When I drove up to that school the first time after it had been renovated, I was overwhelmed. I did a lot of work at that campus with United Way years ago, and I would leave there hurting because I knew how hard those teachers were working, and I knew what they had to work with in terms of facilities. Now what a joy it must be for them to come to work. And it's more than that. It's the standard you've set there that's going to be reflected in the community. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I don't have data to prove it. But I'm pretty sure that there are families who look at that school, they live in their community, and they say, we have to keep our yard up. We have to do what it takes to keep our house painted and repaired because the school district set the standard and we can't let things slide. If you don't believe curb appeal's important, talk to any realtor in Tarrant County. So yeah, there are aesthetic things in here, and I'll defend them all day long. So here's where we leave this. We have to leave it in your capable hands. But I want you to know that the task force, these presenters you've heard tonight, we're not going to stand behind you. We're going to lock arms with you. And if you decide to go forward with this, we're there. We can have conversations you can't. We can talk to people in the grocery store, in the library, in the movie theater line, in church, and synagogue, and all the other opportunities for folks to mingle in this community. And we can advocate in a way that you can't because of your position. We understand that. Let us help you. Let us go with you. That concludes our presentation, but I'm going to ask the other presenters to come up here, and we're going to give you a few minutes. If you have any questions you want to address to us about process or how we came to any of these decisions, we would be happy to address those at this time.
Any questions from the board?
I heard one or two of you mention it. I was just curious to know, as you guys mingled with the 45, how many of you were not fully in favor of a $1 billion bond prior to this beginning? Okay, as a as a follow-up question is short, or maybe pick one person concise that. What was, if you had to pick one, what was the game changer for you?
For me, it was equity between the school districts and the students. Like I said, even in my part-time job, seeing the inequities between some of the campuses, even with all the work that the staff does on it, was very obvious.
For me, it was the fact that I drive by those schools every day. I had no idea what was behind the front door. And to be able to take the tour of the two high schools in Bell Manor, that's a complete eye-opener. And then to realize that there were 3 other schools like that, when we're looking at a community that's always been taking pride in the fact that there's nothing distinctly different about anybody in the community because we're all one community, we just had to do it. It just sort of, for me, and my reply to the survey was it was a no-brainer. Unfortunately, I don't have to go out and market it, but yeah.
And for me, it was $1.5 billion in 5 years if we didn't do it now. Yeah. The economic development for this community on what we do is incredible. I go around the country representing the Economic Development Foundation. They want to know how great our school district is. We have a great school district, but we need that curb appeal to bring people in here. We are 5 minutes from the airport. People want to move to this community, and if we have great schools, it's a win-win for everybody.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. When I opened this to, review it over the weekend as part of my preparation for tonight, I loved what I saw just from the slides, but I wasn't sure what to expect or how it was going to be presented. You all really did a great job, and thank you for, I know it was a lot of time that you all put in, but thank you for your dedication and your time, and just every single one of you presented your part with precision and passion, and I think that helps me personally. Anybody who knows me, there's a few of you that I don't know, that I need to shake hands with and know, but I don't use my head a lot to think. I use my heart more to think, and I just think that you all presented with a lot of passion and a lot of conviction and precision, and having you out there, like, Dr. Ballou was saying, to talk to people the way that maybe we would like to, but we can't, or I can't articulate things like Dr. Ballou does. So thank you for your time, and I loved every part of it. I think especially Matthew, it's so, you're just precious. Like, I love kids anyway. Kids are my heart, and all of us, but just for you to take the time to do that and to really, from your perspective and your words, in where you are in your journey in life, it's very impactful, and I think that you especially could have a real impact on people that you talk to, and how we put this forth, to the community. So thank you all so much.
Just as superintendent, I want to thank the entire committee. The dedication of time and energy that was put into this. It is a testament to this community, so I do want to thank you all.
I personally, you want to say something?
Go ahead.
I mean, I wanted to thank the committee as well. I mean, getting to be part of it and getting to, hear it firsthand. I mean, it was a fantastic cross-section of the community, people from both sides of the district, and just so much great input and so much great discussion happened over those 5 meetings. I really want to thank Dr. Harrington and the entire ELT for putting together this program and putting together the meetings and facilities. It was fantastic. I'd like to thank Mr. Brown for participating. I appreciate you accepting that invitation and being part of it. And I really wanted to thank the 2 high school principals, Mr. Belcher and Mr. Harris. I think you guys just added an extra something to all those nights that we had together with your insights and the way that you talked about your schools, with the passion that you talked about your schools. I think that, as much as anything, probably changed a lot of hearts in terms of seeing how much you guys care about these buildings and about these kids that go to these buildings and how you want better for these schools going into the future. So thank you to everyone who participated, and I really enjoyed and got a lot out of the. I've been on the board for 10 years, and I learned something at every meeting that I didn't know before. So it was a really important process to go through, and I assure you that this board is going to take your recommendations very seriously as we go forward in all of our discussions, and we'll be weighing everything and working really hard to come up with the best proposal and best solution for the community. So thank you again.
I think for me, more than anything tonight, you all proved that this community is very, very, very special. I chastised the legislature earlier, but now I want to, just praise all of you for participating and for showing your support. We can show everyone else in Texas how to do it right. We've been doing it for years. We can do it with this, and you all are the beginning of that, so thank you.
Matthew's got one more thank you.
Come on, man.
I would just like to thank Ms. Hollander and the rest of the task force and the PR and marketing department and the board for listening to us, and Dr. Harrington for being at all the meetings, and all of the executive leadership who was there supporting us and who was advocating for us and who really wanted this to happen but had to leave it in our own hands. And just thank you. And thank you to my parents and my family for, oh, Matthew, another committee? Really? Do you... I've heard that one before. Do you really have the time? Yes, I do, because this is important. And so thank you to both my parents and my family, and really thank you to HEB staff and leadership for allowing me and allowing all of us to be a part of this.
So.
I feel like you're headed down the road to one day be sitting here.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew.
Let him graduate from college and then we'll be voting for him.
All right.
Awesome.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute break.
Oh, absolutely. They did an amazing job. They knocked the freaking part.
All right, at this time, the board's going to pick up back with our reports and presentations. We're at item 11.02, reports on employments, resignations, and retirements. Any questions on that report? All right, the 2023-2024 restricted dates calendars. I believe Ms. Tuttle has an update for us.
Just I have a question on the previous one on employment resignations. I noticed, a little bit confused. On the resignations, they say other educational opportunities. On your exit interview, do you gather data on why they're leaving?
We do. I don't think this is on.
No, I don't think it is either.
Let me see if I have it off on accident.
Check. Okay. Yes, we do. In the anonymous exit survey, we always look at that information. We also do have a segment where they can tell us specifically, if they choose to, what district they're going to or what other career they're going to. And then we look at that data annually around November, because that closes on September 1st, and share that information with the executive leadership team. And we have that data going back about 15 years.
So the 2023-2024 restricted dates calendar.
So I just wanted to call your attention to the process that we utilize when we approve the employment dates of the school calendar. The next step is always the restricted dates calendars. We share these with the staff so that they can plan accordingly, and they do not require board approval, but they are an information item. The only time we make changes to these calendars during the school year, and it occurred this year, is when there are changes at the state level with testing. But the other thing I wanted to mention just for this group is that we do have a process where individuals can request a day off, and they can request to use personal leave on a restricted day, and we outline very clearly what does and does not count as a one-time life event. And we approved about 160 of those this year. So when someone does meet that criteria, we are always able to do that. Most of the campuses do request that they secure a substitute first. And you see several versions of the calendar, but the ones that have all caps, the word calendar in them, are actual calendar versions that align to our student calendar. Any questions?
All right, no questions. Any questions on disbursements for the month of May 2023? All right, 11.05, universal screening. Dr. Norgard.
All right, good evening. I have a lot of data for you, but this is an end-of-year report, so you've already seen 2 reports on each of these sets of data. So because I know that you have all of these slides to peruse and spend as much time as you want, I'm going to go very quickly for you to remind you that these are related to our strategic plan for early literacy, early numeracy, EISO for the board, and meeting or exceeding progress. That's what all of this data is related to. I have reminded you of some of the context of how tests change, but this is all the same as it was at beginning and middle of year. So I'm going to jump straight to the data and tell you our arrows are green. That's what I know that you want to hear for reading 3D. The only place we saw any red in a comparison of year to year is at second grade comprehension, but that was comparing this year's second graders to last year's second graders. In the cohort data for that group, they have improved over their own comprehension. So just to let you know, our reading 3D data, everything is moving in the correct direction. That is what all of these slides are telling you with their green arrows, and you can see the targets. So English and Spanish both represented for you. Comprehension, those are together. So you can see the growth over for the students compared to themselves and compared to the previous year. So this was the one where we saw it down compared to last year's, but you see for this own group compared to where they were beginning and middle of year, they have grown. Questions about reading? Okay, we're going to jump on to math. Math, I've given you the context again, remembering this is a relatively new test, so the number of students achieving those standards may not be what we're used to looking at, but it's because they are still aligning the standards of this test. The important thing is where these have been currently set, we're continuing to grow. So we've got all green arrows again in math. You can see for kindergarten compared to previous years, how they grew across a year. First grade over last year's, how they've grown this year, second grade, and how they have grown this year. questions about math? Okay, I'm going to slow for just a moment before I go into M-Class, because this is where you have to shift that trigger in your brain. Because before we were talking about, there was the potential that 100% of students could meet a specific target, because those were criterion reference. Everybody that checks this many boxes gets full credit. As we move into the MAP portion, we have to remember it's norm reference, not criterion reference. So it's about how do you compare to other students. This is all about the bell curve that we've talked about before. So you just have to shift your thinking. 100% is not a realistic target here. We're not getting all of our students to a certain goal. We're looking at where do they fall in comparison to each other. Okay, it's a big shift. So I had to pause for a moment here. But here you can see I've given you both the end of year performance separated by English and Spanish where we have it, but what we're really looking at is how have our bands shifted over time. And depending on, are we getting more blue at the high end? Are we decreasing the amount of red? That's what's going to show us overall, have our students grown the way that we expected? And remember, bell curve, 50% would be right there at the middle. So we're looking at a target of, we expect 50% of our students to be achieving expected growth. Okay, not 100% like we think of with other things, okay? So knowing that number, keeping that 50% in mind, 54% of our third graders met or exceeded their growth projection, because that's how they fall in comparison to others' growth. For our reading this year, here is how they have changed. So you see how that blue bands have actually gotten smaller as we moved through the year. So we didn't achieve 50%, we have 43%, and it was really at that top end. They started off really strong. We needed them to finish strong. Could be a number of factors, could be fatigue also at the end of the year, all of those things that we watch. Fifth grade reading, we see how they have shifted slightly in their bands over the year, but overall 51% met or exceeded their growth projection. And in sixth grade, we only test in English. You can see their growth, the shifts in their quintiles, 44%. So again, it's at the top end is where we're seeing that's not meeting the growth. That's why we need to be sure, as we are working to help our students that are struggling, we make sure when we are talking about growth, there's no ceiling here. On STAR, there is a ceiling. You got all the questions right. That was 100%. With math, they should keep growing and keep pushing, even those high-achieving students. So that's what this data is telling us, is to be sure we're still pushing our high-achieving students to even higher levels. Then we look at math. We see how they've shifted over the course of the year. We see more blue and more green. 67% of our third graders met or exceeded their growth. So that is really significant beyond the norm. Fourth grade math, we see how they have moved over the year. Again, we fell a little below. We were losing some of the blue. Fifth grade math, again, you see that difference in the blue, so 39% at the growth, but we can tell which end where this is happening. How do we keep pushing and motivating those students to continue to push themselves forward? And in sixth grade math, 59% met or exceeded their growth projection. Questions about MAP?
I just want to make a statement, Holly.
Sure.
It's the end of the year, 2 years post-COVID. This is amazing to see these arrows in the green. I just want to take a moment of privilege and say, I know you, your team, the teachers, Dr. Harrington, it's just amazing that we've done this. And I know we've blown through it, but I just want to say bravo. This is exceptionally good.
Thank you. It's a privilege for me to get to stand here and represent it, because it's my coordinators that are out here, wading through facilities and all because they wanted to be here, as you see their data this evening. I just get to stand up here and take credit for their work and what they do for our teachers that translates to our students. So thank you for that acknowledgement. Any other questions or comments?
I understand the bell curve. And I understand that 50 is good, but I still have a problem with the exceeded growth or met or exceeded growth projection statement. Because in my mind, growth has always been about 1 year's growth over one course of education. And this is different though, right?
It is different. It is different because I'm not trying to hit a particular different mark. It all depends on where I started, and how much did I grow compared to the person next to me. And if somebody next to me was really low and had more room to grow versus I was really high, I actually had to really push to continue to grow at the same rate as someone else. Because it's not just about how much I grew. It's how did I grow in comparison to the way everyone else was growing. It's different. It is, I understand it's hard to wrap around. Okay.
If you don't mind, I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're all coughing and sneezing.
Started with me.
I was in Austin, so I'm going to blame it on that.
It's kind of hot.
First of all, thank you this evening. And before I get started, I really want to take a moment to acknowledge the work of Marie Becker. Anytime that you come into a position that you're following someone that had been in the position for years, it's always a tough act to follow. I will say Marie has come in and really owned this information this year, but not only owned it, she's really wrapped her head around it, and she's doing great things. Much like you've heard this evening, Marie is really helping us be great stewards of our money and great stewards of our federal funds, which is really what I'm going to talk tonight, our title funds and our ESSER. And this is just a brief update for you so you can see how we are spending the money. And if we do have any deep dive questions, I'm going to let the expert come up here if I'm not able to do that for you. So really, Title I, as you know, we have 18 of our elementary campuses are Title I schools. Next year, we may have an additional junior high that is Title I, and we'll talk about that when we get closer to the start of the school year. But bottom line for Title I is how do we increase student achievement? And that's our focus, and that's where the funds are spent. And so what Maria has done for us is she's really broken that down, and so 80% of the total campus level funds are really going to be, or 80% of the funds are at campus level, and 90% of that is full-time payroll. And if you look at where we spend our money and where we have consistently talked about this over the last 3 years through ESSER and COVID is instructional specialists, instructional interventionists, and another really important part that we're really working on is our family engagement, getting our families in that need that additional support, helping them find ways to be engaged with our community, but more importantly, how do we get their kids to school? And Marie has done a great job with all of our facilitators and specialists trying to find ways to do that. And then if you look to the right side, the district level funds is about 20%, and again, almost all of that goes to payroll. That's our coordinator for pre-K, family engagement, federal programs, secretaries, elementary student technology integrators, social workers for our homeless students, which is super important. That number continues to grow each year. And then our bilingual family support, and as you know, our emergent bilingual students, we're almost at 25% now. And then we have some funds that go to contracted services and other things to support materials and supplies. Title I, this is just a simple breakdown of what you just saw, really. As you can see, almost $3.5 million go to payroll, and then the remaining funds are for contracted services and all the way down to our indirect cost. Again, it's about putting the money into the people, which directly impacts students. For Title II, intent and purpose. How do we support effective instruction? And you can see the definition on the right. That's the TEA's information, but really, we boiled it down for you. And again, 90% of our Title II funds go to payroll, and you can see we support math, English, advanced academics, and social studies, science, and our coordinator of pre-kinder. And the remaining funds go to contracted services, PD, and other conferences. You do see that we have a private nonprofit or PNP participation. We do give funds, if needed, to private schools, and it's allowable expenditure. We're required to do that, and it's a very small portion, but we do have to at least extend that out. They don't always use all of that money, but we have to make that offer. And again, you can see just the breakdown, and again, the majority of the funds are payroll. Title III, our English Language Acquisition, or ELA, and again, that's about resources for helping our students become more proficient. And so you can see again, where does the money go? To payroll, and we have 3 district facilitators, family engagement liaison, federal programs, and LPAC, family engagement specialist. And then a little bit of the money that's left over, you can see that we also support that through conference registration, travel, ways to support the teachers in improving their PD, professional development. And again, the breakdown. And then Title IV, that's a well-rounded education, safe and healthy schools and technology use. And again, you can look at Title IV, approximately 85% of that is payroll. And these are the people that support that: coordinator of world languages, licensed specialist, or LSSP, LCSW, we have 3 of those, and student information specialist. And again, what funds are left, all the things that we've been doing through the other 4 titles. And again, you can look at the proportion of money spent. An update on ESSER 3, and as you can see the asterisk in the note there, reminder, and we'll probably say this at least 2 or 3 more times before the year is over, we must expend all of these funds by 23-24, so August of next year, almost 12 months from now, 13 months from now, we have to have used all of our funds, and that is in response to COVID-19. I know we've said it, but as a board, I want to thank you and Dr. Harrington for his vision when he started this over 2 years ago. And our EdOps team, we have really looked at how to spend this money to help students. We didn't buy things. We paid for people to come in and to help close the achievement gap. And the reports that Holly just shared and the teams that she has, it's evident that our practice has worked really well. It's going to be a little bit scary in a year from now, but we're going to think about that and figure it out. But again, approximately 55% of our ESSER funds have gone to payroll for additional staff. And we just had our meeting back in June, and we're going to be looking at which of those staff, how do we continue moving forward when the ESSER funds are out. But as you can see, we've got academic recovery, ESL, nurse, special education, and mental health support. And the mental health support has been really key for the last 2 years in helping our kids, but also our staff. Contracted services, all the things that you would expect, crossing guards, SROs, consultation, language line, strategic planning, our PE curriculum revisions, which has been really good. We've been working on those quite a bit so that our elementary students have a more robust PE curriculum. And then the social emotional piece, and how do we help that in our communities and schools in that partnership, and some of you attended that luncheon with us, and you saw and heard about the great work they're doing for our campuses. And then our remaining things, materials and supplies, library books, online intervention, online resources. And when we look at the budget line here in a moment, you'll notice that technology, you'll see that in supplies. That's a big portion of what we're spending and allocating for this year, but that's for laptops, flat screens, audiovisual, et cetera. And then approximately summer school, 1% goes to summer school transportation, PD, and then we're able to put aside 11% for indirect costs, and I'll show you those numbers in just a moment. So if you look at our indirect cost over the last 3 years, we've been able to set aside $1 million or more, or close to $1 million or more each year, and we're allowed to do that. And then if you look at materials and supplies, I know that 1 or 2 of you are questioning the $5.5 million. Almost all of that, $5.1 million, is for technology. And so that's how we've been able to really support the changes that we've gone through over the last 3 years. Finally, any questions that either I can address or Marie if need be?
Any questions on the ESSER grant framework?
One thing I just wanted to point out, you talk the library and technology. If you recall back during COVID, you know, we tried to distribute library books. Well, that was a great thing to get those books out, but many of those books did not come back. And so that's why a lot of what we use intervention, or that COVID money for, obviously for intervention, for payroll, but also to recover a lot of our lost costs during the COVID crisis. And that's what we had to put money back into our technology department and then replace a lot of library books. And that we were able to do that by targeting those specific needs with the ESSER money.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad. All right, now we'll have our end-of-year safety and security report. Mr. Phillips.
Good evening, everybody. Dr. Joe, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I often tell you that I wish I was you when I grow up. Now I want to be Matthew Boyd. If I could have been that mature at 17, Andy Cargile would still have hair. Just saying. I wanted to do just a quick end-of-year report to everybody with 2 prongs. One on the random intruder audits that we have completed for the year. They ended up doing 22. They got to 22 of our schools. We had 8 that had corrective action needed. So about a third, but most of those were in September and October, and I think we had 1 in December. The last 8 schools that were audited, we had no corrective actions on. So I want everybody to know that everything that we did during the year, getting the schools and the routines and the weekly door checks and making sure that everybody knew what their roles were, has worked significantly. So even though there will be improvements coming to the safety and security. It is a team effort, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the campuses for what an incredible job they did this year. The second part, what I wanted to catch you guys up on, is where we were for the security measures that we asked for and that have been approved. I want to make sure everybody knows that we're in the process and making progress with those. For our new cameras and security software, there's an RFP that's about to come out for the actual security cameras and the software. We have already purchased the hardware for each of the campuses and each of the SROs, so they all have accelerated desktops that they will be able to station in their offices, so that when we get the new software, we'll be able to process in a much more timely manner instead of looking for 3 or 4 hours for something that happened over 30 seconds. So that's a huge plus. The Raptor ID program with our emergency management, with our visitor management, and with our volunteer management has all been approved. Those contracts were actually signed today. And so the RFP, we went through that, purchasing orders have gone out, and that has been signed. So hopefully implementation of Raptor will start mid to late July, and our goal is to get it, hopefully everything in place and trained before school starts. We do have a transition window with positive proof if for some reason that Raptor's not completely up by the time school starts in August. The Trinity fence is, I believe, in the bid process right now. It was awarded? Okay. So we are in the process of getting that put forward. I have promised Mike Harris that I'll get him a gold fence post digger when we start that. Elementary fencing has been purchased. We did use our $1.1 million for the safety grant for elementary chain link fencing, so all of that is in the process. We have been going out to the campuses the last couple of weeks and doing measurements on the priority campuses, so we will start that construction and transition over the summer for the first 5 schools, which will hopefully, all of that will hopefully start over the summer. As we get into the question from ELT this week when I was talking about fences, as we get into the transition to putting up the 6-foot fences, the schools that have 4-foot fencing, we will come back and replace the 4-foot with the 6-foot, but for now, we're shoring up the schools that are next to the public parks and that have wide open spaces that we need to get implemented. Again, the cameras are already, that RFP is coming out. The mobile radios, that RFP is about to come out for the walkie-talkies for the teachers. So we did go through a process of evaluating, and now that RFP should, again, Gary, I think, is either out or coming out this week. It's in processing. Security film, the 3M security film for the outside of the schools, that is in process. Maintenance is working on putting together the schedule. They've already purchased a lot of the 3M film, so they're in the process of putting their schedule together. The open gate weapons detection, magnetometers, weapons, stuff for Trinity, so that has all been purchased. Trinity will have 5 sets, Bell will have 2 sets, Trinity will have 2 sets, and then Central Junior High for the field will have 2 sets. All of those are mobile, so they can be moved for events. They're very easy to move around. They're only about 20 pounds and they're on wheels. So we will be putting together a schedule for you guys to look at what that looks like for our events next year. And then the mapping program is the last part. As you guys saw in the state requirements for the digital mapping for all of our floor plans, that has gone out and the purchase order was cut this week. So that will come. That usually, they told me it's about a 6-week process, so hopefully by the time school starts, we will have all of the mapping completed and loaded into our maintenance system and first responder system. So that's where we are. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an update before we broke for the summer. Any questions on any of this?
Thank you, sir. Any questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are down to action items. Nothing was removed from the consent agenda, so item 12.02, consider approval of financial statements for the month of April 2023. Mr. Williams.
Okay, now we get into the really exciting stuff.
That's my favorite.
All right, we're going to be looking at the financial statements ended April 30th, 2023 For the general fund, as you can see, we have a fund balance of $225,368,799. That represents revenues over expenditures of $63,741,435 and some change. You have these that you can follow along with on your screens. As I've been saying every meeting, the investment interest is really our exciting thing in financials this year with the increased investment interest. 3.9 million as compared to a little over 300,000. That should say April. I've missed changing that to April from March. Total expenditures as of the end of April are at 61.98% of the budget. The fund is performing as it is expected. The general fund expenditure matrix report, that again, the payroll is at $110,826,004 for the period. Is currently, that's 86%, so we're honing in on that 8% that we end up with at the end of the year of payroll that we discussed earlier. Utilities at $2,737,536 are at 2%. Second largest expenditure, a third largest expenditure of $1,808,011 is at 1% for instructional supplies. Child Nutrition Fund, their fund balance is $10,918,902. That represents revenue over expenditures of $2,511,924. That department, I hate to keep saying this because it sounds like a broken record, but they've done very well with a limited number of staff, and we'll just continue to try to find people to fill those empty slots we have. But their budget's doing great. The debt service fund has a fund balance of $53,066,166. That's revenue over expenditures of $36,801,299. In this fund, this is another one where the investment interest is fairly substantial at $967,000 as compared to $35,000 at the same time last year. First debt payment was made back in February. Our next one is due August 15th, so we'll start processing that very soon. And then I've been working with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, our bond attorneys, as well as Hilltop Securities, our financial advisors. Spoke to them again today about defeasing or paying off $5 million worth of outstanding bonds before the fiscal year ends, so that's a plus. Pre-K CK program fund, that fund balance is $460,650. That's revenues over expenditures of $375,228. So that program, of course, this is at the end of April. So, but even at the end of April, we had received 105.22% of the budgeted revenue for the year. So that program is doing very well. And at the end of April, they were also at 64.75% of their budget for the year, so under the 67% for 8/12 of the year. That fund is doing as expected also. Special revenue funds, these are all our title funds, all our different, those types of funds. Those funds at April 30th were at 41.51% of the budget. So well under the 67% for 8/12 of the year. And as I say, pretty much every month, there is a lag on the revenues due to the TEA draws coming in. We have to request those draws and then get reimbursed for those expenditures. So those funds are all tracking as expected as well. Campus activity funds, that fund balance is $3,594,246. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $820,508. That funds, those kiddos have done a great job raising money, and they're raising more than they're spending. So they're building up they might be future business managers for a school district. 2018 bond fund, that fund is, of course, working its way down as we are starting to pay for things on Bel Air is where most of those remaining bond funds are going. It's at $16,925,756. That's expenditures over revenue, $7.554581 million. Another fund where the investment interest earned is at $552,649 compared to $13,684 1 year ago. So yes, interest is it's something I hadn't seen in a long time. So it's kind of nice to have some interest revenue coming in. And as I've stated in the past meetings, that's all of this is being used. We are spending down these funds before we start dipping into the locally defined fund to pay for the Bel Air project. The possible bond, we keep talking about a November 2023 election, but we call it a Series 2024 because by the time we sell those bonds, that's probably when it will actually be. So we're sitting at $773,910 on expenditures in that fund, and of course we don't have any revenue yet because we haven't called a bond election to hopefully be able to generate some revenue to pay for these funds. But once we do, we will be able to reimburse ourselves for these expenditures. Locally defined capital projects fund, that is setting at $57,316,282. That's expenditures over revenues in the amount of $1,477,538. Like I said, a lot of these will be used for the Bell Elementary rebuild once we exhaust all the 2018 bond funds, finishing up the annex remodel back behind us, safety and security additions, and the Trinity and LD baseball, softball rebuilds. And purchase of new property in the near future, possibly, and a few other projects. And that's about it for the report. If any questions or comments with that?
Any questions on the financial statements? All right, this is an agenda item this evening, so I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the financial statements for April 2023.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the financial statements for April 2023. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of budget transfer and amendment request. Mr. Williams?
Okay, these are the budget amendment and transfer requests we have for the month. These are really pretty run-of-the-mill, normal type budget requests for this time of the year, so there's nothing really outstanding, but if you have any questions on anything, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Any questions on the budget transfers? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the budget transfer and amendment request for June 2023.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the budget transfer and amendment request for June 2023. Please vote. And that motion passes. 12.04, consider approval of 2023-2024 salary schedules.
Okay, I get to present these because these are a big impact on our budget. And this, of course, will be for the next school year. So the budget information we looked at earlier, that did include a 3% raise in that budget information that we presented, and that is also, there is an increase in the salary schedules for next year to go along with that. I will say Cicely and her department has worked really, really hard. We have condensed made things, we've really simplified this salary schedule compared to prior years. And one of the big things we've really worked on hard too is getting our transportation department salary scales changed into a format that the average bus driver can understand and not think they can go somewhere else and make more money. So anyway, so I present those to you, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those, or Cicely would be sure help too, I'm sure.
Any questions on the salary schedules? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the proposed 2023-2024 salary schedule, which includes a 3% increase for staff as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the proposed 2023-2024 salary schedule, which includes a 3% increase for staff as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. 12.05, consider approval of the 2023-2024 schedule for supplemental duty pay.
Okay, this is, again, another component of the pay plan for our staff, and I believe Cicely may have some things to talk through on this particular schedule, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
I know I listed for you in the Friday update all of the changes, but just for this group, I would like to go over and highlight a few of these. So I'm just going to quickly point out a few of the changes that have been made, and I'm really proud of the work that the executive leadership team has been doing since November to really look at the needs that are represented in the supplemental duty schedule. So we have added a step team stipend for our high schools, which is much needed, much deserved. We've also aligned our orchestra director and assistant director to the junior high band stipends. We also have added a specific stipend for our cosmetology program for that teacher in order to ensure that we're able to get the hours needed for the students who are seeking certifications. Also, culinary arts and culinary arts lead teachers, because those are programs that do require quite a bit of outside events, and so we want to make sure we're compensating accordingly. We're very excited to be able to offer a lead teacher special areas elementary stipend. This is something that we've not had in the past, and we believe that it is absolutely deserved and appropriate, and so that will correlate or align to the lead teacher at elementary. We also, I'm not going to go through each of these, but two that we are very proud of and very excited about that have been a long time coming. I want to call your attention to a new stipend that is called Bilingual Paraprofessional Designated Campus Verbal Translation Support. And so the way that this will work is that our elementary campuses will be able to identify 2 paraprofessionals, our junior high campuses will be able to identify 2, and high schools will be able to identify 3 paraprofessionals who are regularly called upon to provide verbal translations to customers, internal, external, parents, guardians, students, ARD meetings, 504 meetings, all of those types of things. And principals will utilize the job descriptions and how those are posted. We want to make sure that we're looking at how something is posted. Is it bilingual, preferred, or required? But then also, some of our campuses have more than just one language that they may have people that are translating for. And so we want to make sure to honor all of the needs. Then aligned to that, we will have a bilingual paraprofessional designated department verbal translation support stipend. And so if there's an employee who is regularly translating for their job, for our employees, for example, for our parents, because of the work they're doing or the department they're working in, then they will also be eligible for this annual stipend. We've also aligned our Extended Day Academy assistant manager tiering to the Extended Day manager tiering. And then we also, you are very familiar with our 4 teacher and teacher assistant special ed stipends that you graciously allowed us to communicate in advance 2 months ago after approval. And those are already, we're seeing the fruit of those. We're already seeing individuals willing to consider coming back. And more importantly, people that we're interviewing, whenever Renee and her team and our campus administrators are interviewing and sharing this information, it's helping us to be able to hire special ed staff. So we want to say thank you for letting us do that in a non-traditional way. And then we also have added something that we believe will be very important, and it's going to be for a teacher serving as a special ed case manager in a vacancy. And so there will be an opportunity for those folks through Renee's office, through Ms. Reek's office, to be able to be compensated through a stipend. And finally, one big change that we've made is that in the past, you all remember that we added a longevity stipend for our custodial staff a year ago because we really realized that was an area we were really lacking, and we wanted to retain our employees. And so I'm very excited that our business operations department has expanded that, and so that now is listed as all child nutrition services, maintenance and operation, and transportation employees in auxiliary pay grades 1 through 8 will be eligible for this stipend, and it is an annual stipend, and we really believe this will make an impact in some of the very groups that Mr. Williams has been speaking to you about this evening. So those are just some highlights, and I wanted to take a moment on the record to share those. We're excited to roll those out to our staff. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Tuttle. Any questions? All right, I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the proposed, oops, I'm on the wrong thing. I move the board approve the new staffing table units as submitted. Wrong one?
That's 12.05.
What are we on?
12.05.
12.05? Yep. I move the board approve the proposed 2023-24 schedule of supplemental duty pay as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the proposed 2023-2024 schedule for supplemental duty pay as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, item 12.06, consider approval of update to 2023-2024 staffing table.
So 3 units that we're asking your approval for tonight. The first is a security officer in our safety security department. And the second is adding an additional 0.5 to a district teacher facilitator of secondary GT that we asked you to approve the reorg of at a previous meeting. And then finally, a 1.0 CTE teacher of cosmetology.
Any questions? It's great to see that our CTE programs are growing, right?
Yes.
I will accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the new staffing table units as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the new staffing table units as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, consider approval of revisions to 2023-2024 employment dates of the school calendar.
We always want to provide flexibility when it is based on a need of a department. And in this case, we're bringing forward a couple changes to some calendars. One is our transportation calendar. We're actually going to front load. We're going to take a day from the end of that calendar and move it to the front of the calendar because of the amount of turnover we've had in that department. It's become necessary for those folks to have more than just a day and a half, 2 days to run their routes and really become familiar and prepare for the new year. So we that's one adjustment you see, and then we also have a calendar that's being deleted as we're moving some employees into another calendar. So because it is an employment date calendar, it does require board approval.
Any questions on this calendar? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the 2023-2024 revised employment dates as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the 2023-2024 revised employment dates as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, 12.08, consider approval of RFQ 23-11, construction manager at risk for future construction projects. Mr. Kerbo.
There we go. Right orientation. Mr. Romero, Dr. Harrington, members of the board, this is an important part of the process that you dealt with, or that you heard earlier, regarding whether and how to call a bond program and what to include in that. As you recall, at the March 27th meeting, the trustees approved the construction delivery method of construction manager at risk for what was termed then future construction projects. Since that time, these two particular projects that we're going to discuss in this action right here were better defined, but certainly not, didn't have as much definitive information related to that. So we created a request for qualifications, because construction manager at risk is a qualifications-based process that we conducted in 2 steps. Step 1 was to receive qualification statements. Step 2 was to interview who we considered to be the top-ranked firms, and not only collect information learned in the interview, but also proposed a pricing structure for what it would cost to employ a firm as construction manager. I will have to say, I've been doing this since my first construction procurement was in 1998, and I've probably done 50 to 60 over the years. And I have to say, this was probably the smoothest process, and the reason for that is the number of quality firms that we had to select from. We only had 3, but the 3 that we had were prime construction managers. And that makes it an easy decision for us as a committee. We went through the process, and we hope it'll make it an easier decision for you to consider. We completed our initial evaluation, and the firms were ranked. We decided to interview all 3 of them because this was new to this district. We thought we needed a learning opportunity, and so we spent Friday, June the 2nd, in this very room interviewing 3 construction management firms. Once we completed that process, we tabulated our findings based on what we learned in the interview and how their pricing came in and tabulated. We provided that information for you in the form of a committee evaluation, in the form of a tabulation. And along with that, you have additional data that talks about the staffing proposals for each of the firms there. So with that, we are pleased to recommend that you would name Joris General Constructors as our construction manager for Trinity and LD Bell projects.
All right. Any questions?
So, Mr. Kerbo, talk to us now that we have a construction manager at risk lined up, when we can expect the opinion of probable cost in relation to calling the bond by August 21st.
That was probably the foremost important component of this process, was to make sure that we had that in place by August the 1st. By approving a construction manager tonight, the firm that is the Joris will begin working to finalize the design and create budgets that are based on that design to create an opinion of probable cost. And that we've been assured that they can meet that goal of August 1st. So how the construction manager at risk process differs from just a basic construction project is heavily weighted toward the pre-construction services. That's essential, especially for this project, or these projects right here, is that they engage in extreme design efforts, learning, working with our architect, and then with owners' input, our leadership team from our facilities group, to finalize the design, find out what's important, what knowledge can be shared, and so forth. So that is a heavy component of this agreement, or this process. And they will expend a considerable amount of effort in doing so, and that will lead to not only an estimate, but it'll be a very sound estimate, pretty firm estimate as to what it would probably cost for these projects.
Okay. But just looking at the contract that you provided us, the AIA 133, we're not going to have a guaranteed maximum price until construction docs are at 90%, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When do we expect that to happen?
Subject to the approval of the bond, then we can turn everybody loose on finalizing the design. And once we get the designs completed, the drawings will be at 90 to 95% completion, and then they will conduct their subcontract bids, and that rolls into what's considered the guaranteed maximum price. It'll be the fees that we've indicated in our recommendation here, in addition to the cost of work, and that becomes the guaranteed maximum price.
So talk to us and get us a little bit comfortable with the interplay between opinion of probable cost, which we'll have before we call the bond election, and the guaranteed maximum price, which we'll have after the bond election. I think that we want to have the opinion of probable cost so we know how much to go out for the bond for. But in your experience, what have you seen between the opinion of probable cost and the final guaranteed maximum price, and what are some of the factors or conditions that where those numbers either diverge or they're generally in the same ballpark?
Okay. The key component of that is the collaborative effort between the architect and the owner and the construction manager. Is that you get in at all on the same page at the same time to create and agree upon the final design. By doing it that early, you establish a good scope of work for each of the trades that are included in the project, and are able to get better pricing, and with a firm as reputable as Joris is in the construction industry. We have good subcontractor trades that will provide assurance, sound pricing, and more importantly, to provide the labor to perform the work when it's time to do that during the different phases of the project.
Okay. So are you comfortable with our ability to price the bond off of the opinion of probable cost?
I am, yes. Yes, sir.
So I may have what's a dumb question, but this is talking about the two high schools. Based on the facilities assessment, does it change anything if we add one or 4 elementary schools?
What we'll do is we'll do another project, or excuse me, another process for that. This is just for the 2 high school rebuilds. Okay. So we have the ability to do that for the others. We did not include each project because we didn't know all the projects at that time. We did know Trinity and Bell would be going through an extensive rebuild or renovation, depending on how it turns out, and it turns out that the rebuild is the best decision for that.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve awarding a contract to Joris General Contractors, Inc. to serve as construction manager at risk for RFQ 2311 for future construction projects, including the renovation, replacement of LD Bell and Trinity High Schools as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve awarding a contract to Juris General Contractors Incorporated to serve as construction manager at risk for RFQ 23-11. Okay. Do we need to take a different motion then? Okay.
I move that the board approve awarding a contract to Joris General Contractors, Inc. to serve as construction manager at risk for RFQ 2311 for future construction projects, including the renovation replacement of LD Bell and Trinity High Schools as presented, and authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute a contract on behalf of HBISD.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve awarding a contract to Juris General Contractors Incorporated to serve as construction manager at risk for RFQ 23-11 for future construction projects, including the renovation replacement of LD Bell and Trinity High Schools as presented, and authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute a contract on behalf of HEBISD. Any discussion? And please vote. That motion passes.
Thank you. I would like to just mention that we have Scott Lee, Corbin Roberts, and Kyle Fletcher from Joris here this evening.
Well, I know you guys have been doing projects for us for a while, and I hope that being here during the whole presentation from the community really hit home as to how important these projects are to this community, and how important it is to this board that these projects be done correctly. So. Item 12.09, consider approval of interactive flat panel display units for the Bel Air Elementary School.
As construction of Bel Air is progressing, it's time to start thinking about fixture, furniture, and equipment for that. One of the things that are needed from a technology standpoint are the interactive flat screen panels that we've begun installing in other elementary campuses. This is something that will be installed as well at Bel Air. It's time to order those so we can have them in time to install whenever we take possession of the building.
Any questions?
Just to confirm, when we did this last year, we did it in 2 steps. We did the purchase, and then we came back and did the installation piece, 2 separate prices.
Yeah,
Does this cover both purchase and
both,
installation?
yes, purchase and installation.
Okay.
All right, I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the purchase and installation of 50 interactive flat panel display units for Bel Air Elementary School from Superior Fiber and Data Services as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the purchase and installation of 50 interactive flat panel display units for Bel Air Elementary School from Superior Fiber and Data Services Incorporated as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, consider approval of supplemental digital literacy program.
This is a purchase that was submitted to us for review and approval. Dr. Norgard may be able to speak to it more clearly as to the functionality of it. It's a procurement element. It's over $100,000, which requires board action. So from a procurement standpoint, we review to see, one, is it a purchase that we can make legally? Is there a contract that we can purchase it under? And any other requirements that are needed. We saw none, so we brought this to you for your consideration and approval.
Are there any questions on the purchase or the product? And I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the purchase of supplemental digital literacy program from Amplify as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the purchase of supplemental digital literacy program from Amplify as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of interlocal agreement with the Qualis Group.
As a procurement department, we like to put as many tools in our tool belt as possible. We've learned of a potential issue that we had when we learned that the Department of Information Resources did not renew a contract with Apple to be able to buy Apple products. We made a big purchase of Apple products shortly before that contract expired, but that was just a temporary fix to what could be a prolonged contract or a problem. Qualys Group provides us access to a number of contracts that are available, and I am happy to say that among those is a contract with Apple. That's not the only reason we're joining it, because it's a very useful and broad expanding cooperative that gives us access to all sorts of goods and services that are needed, and it's just another option for us to purchase. It is organized through the Region 10 Educational Service Center, so it's a cooperative through Region 10.
All right, any questions? I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve the interlocal agreement with Qualys Group as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the interlocal agreement with the Qualys Group as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. 12.12, consider approval of pre-K instructional materials.
Again, with the addition of 4 pre-K units, 2, I believe one's at Bedford Heights, the other at Veridian, and 2 sites yet to be determined because of where the enrollment is and so forth. A number of materials are needed as startup purchases for those programs. The list that you have as backup shows what items are being purchased and the related budget that they're purchased from. The total of this is in excess of $100,000, so it requires board action.
Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the purchase of pre-K instructional materials from identified vendors as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve purchase of pre-K instructional materials from identified vendors as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of marketing materials for child nutrition services.
Ms. Narr brought to me a request. We'd begun a project of providing marketing material in the form of graphics to different cafeterias on a scheduled basis. And they've identified a number of sites that are scheduled for improvement. And so we requested quotes from the firm that did our previous ones through EduSource, through the Choice Cooperative program. And the total of that is $119,221.39 and requires board approval. And you see the different numbers that are each of the facilities that are listed in the agenda item.
All right. Any questions? I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve the proposal from EduSource under Choice Partners Contract Number 23-019TP to provide design, installation, and marketing materials as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the proposal from EduSource under Choice Partners Contract Number 23-019TP to provide design, installation, and marketing materials as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of RFP 22-25B for truck rental.
Our need for truck rentals has increased dramatically over the last several years, even this past year with our contests that we've gone to San Antonio for marching contests, and then the contests that follow the day after, and then the trips to Indianapolis for competitions up there. And we're bumping up against that threshold that requires bid process. We attempted several bid processes, and finding companies to enter into agreements with school districts is about as difficult as anything else. So we finally were able to get a vendor to respond, and it's a vendor that we've used in the past. So we feel this will be a useful one. We expect our expenditures to be right around the $90,000 to $100,000 mark, but the agreements that we had previously purchased these under were expiring and no longer available to us. So this is our last attempt, and we will continue looking for other sources that are contracts and to be able to utilize those as backups. But this is primarily for our long-term rentals in the fall for our band programs.
Any questions? In your experience, is there ever a point, I know a lot of other band programs and have semi-trailers and things like that. Is there ever a tipping point where it makes sense to go in that kind of direction versus continually renting?
We're probably pretty close to making that decision as far as looking at a cost analysis of our cost of rental versus our cost of buying a trailer to have it transported. The problem with that is to transport it, it requires a commercial license. We don't have anybody in our fleet that has a commercial license certified to be able to drive a tractor trailer to back up to our trailers and drive it off. So that's another issue. We do have, there are services out there that will do that, and we've been successful at other districts to be able to do that. And if that's a solution that we want to move forward with, certainly be able to put out bids to buy trailers. They're used trailers, but once they're renovated, they're perfect for this application, and seek a long-term contract for transport services. Again, you also look at cost related to that, the transport cost versus maybe buying our own box trucks, and anybody that's on our district's policy can drive those. So yeah. Those are all options we need to explore.
Yeah, and that's also something to be thinking about in terms of rebuilding schools, to have a place to, if you ever might do that, to have a place to park that and have a place where you can back it up to a dock that's long enough for a travel trailer. So, just
good point.
It happened. All right, I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve RFP number 22-25B for truck rentals to MHC Truck Leasing as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve RFP 22-25B for truck rentals to MHC Truck Leasing as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. Consider approval of McKinney-Vento third-party transportation expenditures for 2023-2024.
This is one of the items that Conrad included in our expenditures for ESSER funds or federal funds. As a whole, we're responsible for providing transportation for our homeless students, McKinney-Vento students, and while the agreements that are in place are good through July 31st of 2024, the expenditures are what need to be approved. The current cost as of the end of April was about $150,000, with billing for May yet to come in that may already be in. I didn't check with Ms. Becker about that. Those are expected to be about $25,000. So we look at this to be about worth about $200,000. So we're anticipating expenditures for the 2023-2024 school district to be about $200,000 is what we're asking for approval.
Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the continued use of federal funds for RFP 22-13 third-party transportation as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve continued use of federal funds for RFP 22-23 third-party transportation as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. 12.16, consider approval of door and door hardware replacement at Bedford Junior High and Harwood Junior High.
All right, thank you. Through our job order contract program, we were able to create a scope of work through that with our job order contract administrator and create a scope of work. They walked both Bedford Junior High and Harwood Junior High to determine the hardware they're needed. Mainly it's closings, because you've probably seen that or heard reports of it. The doors don't have closers on them, and they'll slam into the wall and damage the wall and do other types of damage. So this is the need to address that. Not only the closers, but some of the doors themselves don't match, were omitted during the recent renovations, I believe it was. And there are other parts there that are needed to make that project complete, such as kick plates and glass door openings, access controls, and things of that nature. You see a list that are in the agenda items there, but that's what comprises the product, or these two projects.
Any questions? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve job order contract number HEBISD 2023-006 and 007 under buy board contract number 660-21 to Gomez Flooring as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve job order contract number HEBISD 2023-006 and 007 under buy board contract number 660-21 to Gomez Flooring as presented. Please vote. Thank you, Mr. Kerbo. I know that was a long list tonight. 12.17, consider approval of revisions to Student Code of Conduct for 2023-2024.
All right, good evening.
Dr. Johnson.
Good evening. So, as you know, these are preliminary revisions to the Code of Conduct. A lot of the heavy lifting was done last year in the conversion, and so we had two minor changes, and I'll be back with future changes once the legislature special sessions are completed. Any questions?
Any questions? I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve the revisions to the Student Code of Conduct as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the revisions to the Student Code of Conduct as presented.
Fred.
Please vote.
I don't want Fred to be at Lonely Lunch.
No, that says second, Julie. It says motion, Julie, second, Julie.
Good job. Way to be on top of it.
Okay.
That motion passes. Consider approval of advanced classes identified for no pass, no play exemptions for 2023-2024. Any questions on this list?
Looks about the same.
I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the advanced class identified for the no pass, no play exemption as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the advanced class identified for no pass, no play exemptions as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of Education Service Center Region 11 contracts for 2023-2024. Any questions on these? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the proposed ESC Region 11 contracts as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the proposed ESC Region 11 contracts as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. And finally, consider approval of renewal of measures of academic progress, MAP, growth K through 12 licenses. Should we do it, Holly? All right. Any? All right, I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve the renewal of the MAP growth license for elementary campus grades 3 through 6 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the renewal of MAP growth licenses for elementary campuses, grades 3 through 6 as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, other business. Opportunity for board members to request items be placed on future board agendas. Anybody have anything tonight? All right, 13.02, Team of 8 training discussion. So, to avoid being a team of 2, these are the recommendations for us to discuss. Yes. Yeah. From the team of 2 to the team of 8. Yeah. See, we've reviewed the required trainings and have visited with Lydia and have the following recommendations for Team of 8 training. For the 2023-2024 school year, we need to begin strategic plan update planning. Lydia would like to meet with the entire board for 1.5 hours of planning to kick off the 2024 to 2029 strategic plan. She also needs 1.5 hours to work with the board to complete the board self-assessment. These activities will need to occur, and the best use of time would be to do them as a team of 8. For the 2024-2025 school year, this will be a EISO year. This 3-hour training counts for the EISO and team of 8. This is the one training that counts twice if we use it for our team of 8. So those are the recommendations for how to spend our, for the next 2 years. Comments, questions?
I'm just thrilled it's not continuous improvement, because I've done that for the last 25 years.
I know, Andy.
And Marilyn, I knew Marilyn personally for all those times she was in it.
All right, nothing? Okay.
Good.
All right, so we'll move on from there. Open forum number 2. Thank you for staying so late. We don't usually run this late, but Kenya Alu.
Yes, hi. It's been nice being here with you all tonight. My name is Kenya Alu. I'm the Executive Director for Tarrant County Citizens Defending Freedom. It's recently come to our attention that a number of organizations have contacted some schools around the country to pressure school administrators to broaden the language of Title IX to include sexual orientation and gender identity, something which undermines federal law and the legislative authority of the United States Congress. I'm not sure if HEB ISD has been contacted, but if not, it's likely coming. And I'm here to just provide resources and support. While some progressive organizations have followed the misleading guidance of the Department of Education's 2021 Notice of Interpretation following President Biden's executive order on the Supreme Court ruling in Bostick versus Clayton County, both have been significantly misinterpreted, as it was made clear by the court that the latter was a Title VII issue that did not apply to Title IX or any other law. The Supreme Court in Bostick emphasized that sex-based employment discrimination consistent with the Title VII was unconstitutional, but explicitly refrained from applying their ruling to Title IX. As such, this renders the Department of Education's NOI and the executive order null because it expressly contradicts Supreme Court precedent. A federal district court in Texas affirmed that sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected categories because Title IX must be read in the original context in which it was drafted in 1972, in which sex under Title IX was understood to be biological and binary. A federal appellate court covering Florida, Georgia, and Alabama jurisdictions also found this to be true, ruling that a local school board's bathroom policy did not violate Title IX because Title IX conforms to an understanding of sex consistent with the social understanding of sex at the time of its drafting. Beyond this, applying any directive that neither conforms to these recent rulings nor takes into consideration the necessity of receiving congressional approval before making a change to federal law is itself unconstitutional act. In the Bostick case, the Supreme Court stated that the people's representatives are the ones who must amend Title IX, thereby making it unlawful for elected officials, including school board members, to assume changes to Title IX in the absence of approval. To amend Title IX is a power reserved exclusively for Congress. I would ask you to consider this information before acting on the coercive tactics by organizations intentionally misapplying Title IX to push a political agenda that would eradicate Title IX's sex-specific protections that require Title IX to be faithfully understood as it was at the time it was drafted. A serious consequence of this misapplication includes the erosion of student privacy stemming from rights of students to use sex-separated facilities and to participate in sex-separated sporting activities. To prevent this from happening, I urge you to take my statements into account if you are faced with this decision on Title IX. And I did email you all something in May. It's been a while. It's taken a while to get through all the school boards. I do have hard copies here for you all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
All right, so at this time, pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session, discuss Section 551.071 to 551.076. She's just messing with you.
No, we don't really.
All right, the board will now reconvene into open session. Item 17.01, consider approval of modifications to superintendent's contract. Any motion?
I move that the board approve the superintendent's contract as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the superintendent's contract as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. And I
Quickly
wanna give
before we
Judy-
adjourn, Rochelle and Fred, you have copies of the presentation for San Antonio. So that presentation will be given by you two and Dr. Harrington and myself. And then the one in Fort Worth, we're meeting tomorrow, Dawn and Matt. And Joe and I will also participate in that. Are both on the Friday morning at 9:15. This shows who has which slide in the notes. I've given a few notes, but feel free to add or subtract as necessary. And call me if you have a question.
All right. So you just gave it to the San Antonio crowd so far, right?
Yes, you'll get yours tomorrow.
All right. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Yeah, do we need
So, Kay and Nicole,